everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies, recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Emilio.
I'm Madeline.
And I'm Julian. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Seriously, we would love to hear from you. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok for updates, highlights, clips, and other visual supplements to the audio we record at Sleepless Cinematic Pod.
In addition to these main episodes, we also record and release bonus one-off episodes as we see fit. And while we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, foregoing sleep, for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we wrap up our current cycle focusing on offbeat musicals with a category we call Close Up, a deeper dive into the career of a professional in the movie business. We'll likely focus on some lesser-known figures, like character actors or writer-directors, and discuss at least 3 of their representative works and the characteristics that exist throughout.
And to round off this cycle of offbeat musicals, we're going to close in on a prolific American songwriter who has written music for beloved classics and cult favorites alike, Paul Williams. After rising to fame by writing songs for The Carpenters, Three Dog Night, Anne Murray, and others, he transitioned into writing for film with tonight's first movie, Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise from 1974, in which he also stars as mysterious record producer Swan. Just 2 years later, he's tapped by Alan Parker to write the music for Bugsy Malone, a gangster parody starring an entirely child cast. Around the same time, he guest stars on The Muppet Show and makes such an impression on Jim Henson that he is asked to write the music for the Muppet Movie, released 3 years later in 1979.
The more I dug into Paul Williams, the more I was like, what a G.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's so interesting. I remember people talking about how it's a wonder that like Phil Collins, a small, balding Englishman, was such an enormous rock star in the 80s.
Yeah.
This is like going a whole 5 levels further in terms of like what an unconventional celebrity presence Paul Williams was.
Yeah.
But talented as hell, charismatic as hell.
Definitely.
And a great songwriter.
Yeah, any interviews you listen to or watch from him, he just seems like an absolute delight. Like he just seems like a good hang in addition to being like a really talented and prolific songwriter.
Yeah, and interestingly, someone his work is everywhere, but he's not always the most front-facing figure.
Yeah, because he got his start as a songwriter for other people.
Yes.
And he still, I think, rose to fame in a way that maybe songwriters today that don't write for themselves like don't as much, weirdly.
Yeah, sure.
But it's funny if you look at his rise, I think to your point, Julian, has not persevered to this time as a common name. The select few out there who know who Paul Williams is like, well, yes, he's one of the greatest. But I think all 3 of us have probably mentioned the last couple of weeks, like, oh, we're about to talk Paul Williams. And I've had even other musicians here at the place where we work be like, who? Yeah. And that's crazy to me.
Yeah, no, he really has his influence in his fingers over a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Especially in the 70s, but I think even going forward, he's like your favorite musician is probably a huge fan of Paul Williams. So yeah, I mean, he's a name worth knowing.
And while we're setting the scene to discuss some pieces of his body of work, I'm going to draw comparisons to 2 past close-ups that we've done. Maybe the more obvious one is to our close-up on Adam Schlesinger.
Yeah, of course.
Where, this is another person who's a career songwriter, and though many people know him by name from being the bass player for Fountains of Wayne, that he worked behind the scenes a lot too, and that the 3 films that we discussed that contain songs he wrote, it's the song he wrote is kind of at the center of the film, but he's not a physical presence in any of those films.
Yeah.
The other one I'm going to draw is to Tom Waits. Okay. And we discussed Tom Waits, the actor.
Right.
But the detail...
We got into a little bit of the music stuff.
Yes. I mean, you can't talk about Tom Waits, the actor, without talking about Tom Waits, the musician.
Exactly.
So Paul Williams and Tom Waits exist as figures in pop culture in one particularly similar way, in that I think they're both people who emerged in certain times and movements where you could say they were in it but not of it.
Yeah.
And that like Tom Waits, as we discussed in the episode, is someone who he was coming of age in the early 1970s. That was when he became known as a singer-songwriter. And despite whatever influences were circulating amongst his peers, he seemed more influenced by the Beat generation.
Definitely.
And Paul Williams, well, he came to prominence working as a songwriter in LA during like the late 60s and early 70s.
Yeah.
He doesn't exactly fit that. Because like, well, there was Emilio, you put me onto this great episode of Billy Corgan's podcast, The Magnificent Others, where he interviews Paul Williams, and it comes up there that he was someone who really was most influenced by the Great American Songbook.
Oh, that's going to come up a lot.
Yeah,
100%.
And if you know like what that means musically, and you know Paul Williams's music, you can detect it right away.
100%. I mean, even just in the songs of the movies we're covering tonight, you hear it all over the place.
Yeah, I feel like you even hear it when most other writers who would be trying to write in this genre wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Particularly Phantom of the Paradise.
Yeah.
And before we get deep into our discussions, we should just give a little shout out to the guest who we invited for this episode, who sadly could not make it due to illness, but a friend of the podcast, Maggie Hill, who we reached out to on account of her being a huge fan of Phantom of the Paradise and posting vocally about it on social media.
Yeah, and I had seen Phantom of the Paradise before, and I had seen it at the point that she had posted about it, but I do think that her posting that is part of what really got us finally talking about, like, do we really want to figure out a way to get Phantom of the Paradise, into a cycle? So I think in a large way, this cycle partially has come to fruition because of Maggie.
Yes. Thanks, Maggie. Shout out to you. And, well, we've set the stage to talk about Phantom of the Paradise, but before we really get into that movie, there are a few titles that you might confuse it with, such as Trouble in Paradise.
Oh, yeah.
That's, that describes something that certainly occurs in Phantom of the Paradise.
Yeah, lots of trouble.
That is true.
But no, Trouble in Paradise, that's an Ernst Lubitsch film from 1932.
Which I watched recently.
Me too, actually. But yeah, that's a classic tale of infiltrating a higher class by thievery, but it's not quite in the mold you might expect from Parasite. It's a little more whimsical than that.
Definitely a little lighter.
Yeah. But if you're a fan of those kinds of stories, Trouble in Paradise is the classic Hollywood film for you, but it is not Phantom of the Paradise.
That is true. Phantom of the Paradise is also not to be confused with The Phantom of Liberty, which is a semi-autobiographical Luis Buñuel film. It came out the same year of Phantom of the Paradise.
Oh, interesting.
And you guys may know that I watch trailers from a given year before I watch the movie oftentimes. And so I actually watched the Phantom of Liberty trailer before rewatching Phantom of the Paradise, and I still could not tell you what the Phantom of Liberty is about.
Yeah, I feel like I think of Buñuel being more of like his films existing more in years before Phantom of the Paradise, but it's a good point to remember. He was still active and making movies at that time.
I also love the idea of Buñuel having to submit to a trailer like as some form of promotion for his films.
Yeah.
I just really like that. I would also say that considering the subject matter, this is not to be confused with Rockin' the Paradise, which is a song by the rock group Styx off a concept album that they recorded and released in the early 1980s called Paradise Theater. So there are some levels to this where you might get them confused. Styx were contemporaries in some respects to someone like Paul Williams, and they were releasing music around the same time. There's a little bit of stylistic overlap, I would say. So yes, Rockin' the Paradise off of Paradise Theater, not to be confused with Phantom of the Paradise.
And though the other title I'm about to mention also describes something that one could obtain in Phantom of the Paradise, that film is not to be confused with Ticket to Paradise.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
2 tickets to paradise.
It's also not the Eddie Money song.
Yeah.
But Ticket to Paradise, the film, it's a rom-com from 2022.
Oh my
God. It's like Julia Roberts and George Clooney.
Yes.
Did you guys see that?
I did not.
No, this is a movie that I always want to use for Cinematrix and then can never remember the name of.
There we go.
Maybe this will help me remember it going forward.
I hope so. I didn't see it. I heard that it got mixed reviews.
Did you see it, Emilio?
I somehow did. And it is pretty lame. I'm not going to lie. I mean, they're such huge movie stars that it's really hard to hate the movie because they're very charismatic.
charming.
But it's not a good movie. I'm just going to say that.
We just recently did a cycle all about rom-coms, and
This
when
is
I was,
not an Oscar-worthy rom-com, by the way.
well, but when I was reading Esther Zuckerman's book for it, I think that film came up as an example of like there still are rom-coms in the modern cinema landscape, but the middling reviews and mixed reception of that film, despite its success, being kind of an example of the genre in decline.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say that is not a zenith of the genre. No. And though the Phantom in this film is certainly a troublemaker, though I think somewhat justified in his attempts to seek revenge, this is not to be confused with Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
That's true.
How is it that I've, been building up to this episode for a week, thinking about Phantom of the Paradise, and not once I thought of the Phantom Menace?
Oh, I thought about that.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Good.
But maybe, where I did think about Star Wars is the fact that the character we're about to discuss, Winslow Leach, the main character, he's kind of transformed into the Darth Vader of rock and roll.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's
With the
a nice
voice
comp.
changer and everything.
Yeah.
So we'll get into it. But yes, none of those films we just mentioned are Phantom of the Paradise, the Brian De Palma written and directed film from 1974, scored by and also starring our subject for this episode, Paul Williams.
Yeah.
So, Julian, what is Phantom of the Paradise about?
Well, there's so much going on in this very eclectic 90 minutes that it's tough to pin it down, but I'll try my best now. A mysterious and wildly prolific music producer named Swan has opened a new venue called The Paradise. And as he and his staff search for talent to inaugurate this concert hall, a composer named Winslow Leach takes it upon himself to step up from hanging an impromptu advertisement for himself and actually play upon the venue's stage when the venue is empty. Swan and his right-hand man, Philbin, watch from above as Leach performs a portion of his cantata about the legend of Faust, and seeing the genius in his work, Swan acts nefariously by deciding to steal Leach's composition and not give him any credit. Leach attempts to restore recognition of his authorship by first infiltrating auditions at Swan's mansion and becoming friendly with a singer named Phoenix in the process. As Leach is discovered and then ejected, he is also discovered by cops outside of the mansion and realizes he's been framed by Swan for drug possession and is then sent to prison at Sing Sing. Subjected to severe dental abuse, let's call it, in prison and then busting at the seams with fury over what has happened to him, Leach breaks out and finds his way to the headquarters of Swan's label, Death Records, but accidentally gets his face caught in a record press during his infiltration, and then jumps into a nearby body of water, believed by the public to have died. However, a disfigured Leach lives on and continues his quest for recognition and revenge by re-entering the paradise, putting together an imposing costume, and eventually being discovered by Swan and offered a Faustian bargain of his own to become Swan's undisplayed, uncredited master composer. The ensuing events engage with the questions. Will Leach ever get his due credit? How does his admiration for Phoenix shape her rise to prominence? And how long can Swan get away with his dishonesty?
Yeah.
Totally.
Feels like the movie I saw.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Which is a wild movie.
Yeah.
I was new to seeing this movie in its full form.
Yeah.
But how did you guys first come to this movie?
This is one of Dougie's all-time favorite movies. So I was trying to remember when I saw this for the first time. I'm going to guess maybe 2018, 2019, somewhere in there. Dougie is a big Paul Williams fan in general and had previously seen all three of the movies that we're discussing tonight. So yeah, I think I watched this for the first time maybe around 2018. There were parts that really stuck with me, but a lot that I wasn't really able to process in just one watch.
Sure.
And I also think I watched this around the same time that I watched the original Suspiria, which also stars Jessica Harper.
Right.
So revisiting this, I feel like in a lot of ways I was able to experience it for the first time, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I was in a similar boat, not in having a partner who's a big fan of the movie, but in having experienced it once before and figuring that one viewing just was not enough.
Yeah.
For a few reasons. I mean, to absorb the details in the fashion that we do for these discussions, but also simply to appreciate it. Prior to discovering this movie, Brian De Palma, I think my main association with him as a cinephile, it was with his voyeurism thrillers.
Yeah.
Just in cinephile circles, he often gets discussed
They're
for
out
that.
there. Yeah, you don't even have to see them necessarily to understand their influence
Yeah.
or to know that that is how people come to associate Brian De Palma
Right.
as the guy who does that stuff.
I think, I got the vibe with him, but I hadn't seen a lot of his work. And so then I see he's made this bizarre, like, horror rock musical. And I, just purely reading about it, I think Brian De Palma made this.
And like fairly early in his career.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of amazed that he made a movie like this. And I also thought, count me the fuck in. And so then eventually an opportunity to see it on the Criterion Channel appeared at the end of 2023. I want to say it was like maybe December 27th that year that I saw it. I watched it. I loved it right away, but also felt in a good way overwhelmed after seeing it. I figured it's so full of detail that one viewing, I just didn't feel like I had processed it. Now I feel like in preparing for this episode, maybe I still haven't fully processed it, but I've processed it more.
Yeah, I've dug into it a lot in the last couple of weeks in preparation for this because the other two movies that we're discussing tonight, I had so much fun with, but they're a lot breezier.
Yeah.
Whereas this movie, I'm like, all right, I got to really sit with this. So I bought, when Shout Factory, they were doing like a we're closing our website sale at the end of last year. So I actually bought this at the time. And my Blu-ray and DVD have a bunch of bonus features. Emilio, I know you bought the same one.
I did, although
Yeah.
I didn't really get around to the bonus features.
They're
very much.
great.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
This morning I watched, there's an interview with Paul Williams and Del Toro because Del Toro is a huge fan of this movie.
I am not surprised.
Fun
This is
fact.
Guillermo del
Yes.
Toro, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have specified.
No, that's okay.
Guillermo del
Yeah.
Toro.
And on that Billy Corgan podcast episode where he interviews Paul Williams, which was recorded and released in 2025, Paul Williams talks about working with Guillermo del Toro to adapt Pan's Labyrinth into a musical.
I know. It's
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
They kind of allude to this in the interview, but I think the interview was filmed in like 2012, 2013.
Gotcha.
So
it's
I think
a
it's been bouncing
long-
around for a while.
It's
I
gestating.
don't know if this is going to come to fruition, but we'll see.
It
Yeah.
seems like the kind of thing where there's so much mutual personal and professional respect amongst them.
Yeah.
Anytime they bring one another up, they're like, this has to stay out there in the ether because
we can't let people forget about
exactly,
this.
totally.
Yeah. Speaking to the content on that Blu-ray, that there are two commentaries, and the one that I got to listen to part of is with production designer Jack Fisk.
Mhm.
And I really like the idea of a commentary with a production designer.
Yeah.
And for this type of film, it's really
Mhm.
cool. And Jack Fisk is one of the goats.
And when you think of great films that Jack Fisk has done the production design for, I mean, a lot of them are like period pieces or things that have prominent outdoors settings. Things like Days of Heaven or There Will Be Blood, or more recently Killers of the Flower Moon or Marty Supreme.
Mhm.
But then, I mean, I don't have his credits in front of me, but just on pure instant knowledge, maybe the closest film that Jack Fisk has production designed that I can think of to Phantom of the Paradise is Eraserhead.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I would also say Carrie. I mean,
Yeah.
there is
Carrie,
a
for
ton
sure.
of overlap. I think this movie feels like a really interesting predecessor to Carrie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I still haven't seen
I
Carrie.
know. I know very well.
Yeah.
And you
And
know,
that's okay. We'll fix that at some point.
and this is probably the easiest place to say that Sissy Spacek, who is Jack Fisk's wife, is a set dresser on Phantom of the Paradise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a fun credit spot.
Yeah, because they had met working on Badlands together and then were dating at the time that Phantom of the Paradise was made. I think by the time it was released, they had already or were close to being married.
Yeah.
And then Sissy Spacek, as Jack Fisk mentions on the commentary, that she personally designed the gold record bed sheet in Swan's bedroom.
Yeah.
That's so
Yes.
cool.
Yeah, like she sewed that herself. So it's I mean, yeah,
She's
sometimes
multi-talented.
sometimes we do credit spotting as part of our little details segment, and I saw her in those credits as set dresser, and it's like, oh, you think you can miss me with that little
Yeah.
with that little inclusion of her when she's already famous.
But at this time, she's famous, but this is a pre-Carrie world.
This
so
is true.
It's like she's definitely had, Badlands had already come
Badlands,
out at this point, but she wasn't the name that she would later become in the next like 5 to 10 years.
Right. But yeah, I think even in like the Jack Fisk filmography, a film that looks like this is kind of unusual. And I also couldn't help but think of Eraserhead, not just because of the shared credit, but because Phantom of the Paradise and Eraserhead both contain scenes that were shot on location at the AFI Conservatory.
Ah.
Yeah, the Swan's Mansion, the interior of that is the Doheny Mansion in Los Angeles, which I think is the main building of the AFI Conservatory. And then Eraserhead also. I think that entire movie was shot basically behind that mansion.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, he does such a great job of designing it to look like some ambiguous dystopia, but well, just more proof that Jack Fisk is the GOAT when it comes to production design.
So, Emilio, you, as you were saying, this was really your first time digging into Phantom of the Paradise, right?
That's correct. I had seen clips of this movie here and there.
I can't imagine seeing things from this movie out of context.
I had, and I can't remember exactly where. I mean, I think I was interested in seeing this movie for a long time, probably 20 years, to be honest. And yeah, I've spent some time digging into Brian De Palma, so it was very cool to check this box. Wacky film, I liked it. And it is not necessarily my thing in some respects, but it's also, I think, just like a very bold film. I love movies that have this look to them.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about, on our Owen Roisman episode, the particular film stock that I think was very prevalent around the early 1970s. This movie just, the Blu-ray transfer just looks fucking amazing.
Yeah, fantastic.
So like visually, this movie is kind of a feast.
Yeah.
And I think just conceptually, it's very fun. The more dramatic elements of the movie didn't totally land for me. I found myself almost enjoying it the way that I would actually enjoy a movie like the other two that we're talking about, where it's like you kind of take it in a much more breezy manner. And I found for myself that when I did, I was way more along for the ride, I think, than if I was going to get into the details. But I'm really glad that you guys did that.
Yeah.
I think it helps if you've seen this in full before. I do think the first time you really watch this in full, you have to just be along for the ride.
Yeah,
absolutely. Something I think we're going to get into about all three of the films we're discussing tonight is that I don't approach any of these expecting realism per se. I mean, Phantom of the Paradise, I think, is the one that can come closest to any semblance of realism. But even so, the dialogue, a lot of it is delivered in kind of an intentionally campy fashion.
Oh, definitely. This is a very campy movie.
Yes. And yet, you know, maybe it's more those Jack Fisk details that give it some kind of semblance of realism. Maybe just, you know, just set designs and on location shooting. But we're going to zoom in on a particular aspect of Phantom of the Paradise, which, as we've set up abundantly already, is the music written by Paul Williams. And so I think this is such a fitting movie for the category of offbeat musical, because the songs, they don't really have the function that you would expect of a musical, where it's often, as we've noted in some other episodes, non-diegetic. The characters breaking into song is not something that no one bats an eye at that in the narrative. That's not the case in Phantom of the Paradise. Every song is a conscious performance. But, you know, despite their difference from the typical function in the musical, these songs, they do serve to convey character traits. They move the plot forward. And to call back to a detail that came up when we were discussing Velvet Goldmine in the previous episode, these songs are played in full. And so how do you interpret the presence of these Paul Williams written songs in this film?
I mean, at this point in Paul Williams's career, he hadn't really written much rock music. A lot of the music that he was most known for was like softer rock or poppier tunes. We talked about him writing for the Carpenters, Anne Murray, Three Dog Night, the Monkees. A lot of the music that he had experience writing felt very emotional. And I think that, even though genre-wise, this is a slight departure from what he was best known for, I think that taking the emotion from pop songs that he had written translates really well into the characterization that you're talking about in a movie like this. Because if you look at, like, for example, Old Souls, which, by the way, Paul Williams says is like one of his favorite songs that he's ever written. And I'm like, fair.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Great song.
Yeah.
That song takes you on such a journey from an emotional standpoint. And if you look at things like Evergreen, I think doesn't come until later.
Right. That Star is Born a couple years later. Yeah.
But I still think if you look at these two as like examples of a certain songwriting style that he had experience with going into this, I think that works so well in the context of a musical, because that's what you want. Like, you're talking about how it shows you about the characterization and it moves the plot along. Like, you need that deep emotion. And he already had experience with that coming in.
Yeah, I felt the same about the other song that Phoenix sings, Special to Me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that I really love about Paul Williams being so intrinsically tied to this movie is that he lived kind of a charmed existence as a songwriter. And that's not to say he didn't experience turmoil or that it was all coming up roses for him right away. But when he speaks about the early years of him songwriting, he's very quick to credit a lot of people around him for not closing doors on him, for not trying to silo themselves or him away from talent. He is kind of the anti-Winslow, but also shrewd enough to be in that world to see this happen probably to a lot of other people.
Yeah, in the Guillermo del Toro interview, Paul Williams says that De Palma had asked him about playing Winslow originally, and he didn't think he was right for it. Paul Williams didn't think that he himself was right for it. And one of the reasons he did not want to play Winslow is because he didn't want people to think that he was saying the music industry has done this to me.
Right.
Because I think he recognized that he did have a lot of success that in some ways you could attribute to a certain amount of luck. And that doesn't negate skill, you know, but you have to be able to meet the right people at the right time and have the right collaborators and have the right people listen to your stuff to be able to get the kind of success that he did so early on.
Well, to call back to the very first close-up we ever did on the character actor Joe Pantoliano, that I think this came up in his WTF interview, that he gives a lot of credit to the little breaks you get along the way instead of getting one big break. And it sounds like Paul Williams has a pretty similar outlook in terms of his songwriting career.
Yeah. I also love that one of his big breaks was We've Only Just Begun, which was, you know, sung by the Carpenters. The germ of that song was actually from an insurance commercial that he wrote.
Or like a bank commercial.
Or a bank. Thank you. Yes, thank you. It was for a bank.
But I didn't have a chance to actually go find this commercial.
I did find this commercial. It is all of the schlocky things that you would think a commercial would try to do. And it's
get
all
people
about,
to go to a bank.
Exactly. But it's all about a couple that's just getting married. And they're like, the next stage of life is about putting your money in our bank. Right. But I love that he is not the kind of guy who thinks that that is above him. Yeah. He's a working songwriter. I think that's one of the things that also I think about with Joe Pantoliano. Dude is a hustler. Like he's out there trying to make it happen any way he can. And that song, like the germ of it's there, but then it got fleshed out, I think, in a way that doesn't feel nearly as smarmy. Partially because it's Karen Carpenter singing it. Yeah. And, you know, she's the voice of an angel, but also that it was able to kind of live on, that he's not somebody who felt like these two worlds couldn't coexist.
Yeah, and that he's taking what was originally, I would assume, like a 20 to 30 second, more or less a jingle, and being able to flesh it out and change the instrumentation, I would assume, and obviously have a different vocalist on it. Like, he's able to figure out the arc that a song like that has. And I'm glad you brought up that song, because I was thinking about that song, We've Only Just Begun, and then if you look at it in comparison to Old Souls, they're very different songs, but I still think like there's this link in that We've Only Just Begun is about like the beginning of what is implied to hopefully be a long-lasting love, and Old Souls is kind of the other side of the coin, right? Like it's about an age-old love that survives through time. Like it feels like We've Only Just Begun can be like the prequel song to Old Souls.
Yeah. Old Souls, to me, like the way, you know, apart from just its presence in the movie, the way I think of that song in a complimentary way is like, this also feels like it could be a Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds song.
Yeah, I can hear that. For
I hear
sure.
that.
Especially like also like recent Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, like last 10 years.
Definitely.
And well, can I bust this thing out here?
Bust it out, man. You might have to tilt the mic down a little bit, but go for it.
Certainly. So as we sometimes remind you listeners that we record these episodes for the most part in a room full of guitars.
Yeah, so they have chosen one of the 6 that are currently in this room.
Yeah, so like Old Souls, I mean, it revolves around this chord progression. It's clearly in the key of C minor, and it's got a C minor chord as well as an A flat minor to accompany it. It sounds something like this. more sus chord action, like a.
Yeah.
There you go. Ooh, yes.
Yeah,
there it
that
is.
makes all the difference.
Yes. And it's just, sometimes that little ninth tone or a sus2 that you add to a chord can make all of the melodic difference.
Because that also is how the melody starts, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, the vocal melody. And let's take a moment to shout out how incredible Jessica Harper's vocals are too.
Incredible. And she's not even like she was talking a little bit on the commentary. She also has a commentary on this Blu-ray. She was talking a little bit about how she never really sang much. It was actually in college when she was studying theater where her class was asked, everyone was asked to sing in front of the class for a straight theater class.
Yeah.
And that was really the moment when she found out that she could sing. And I'm like, how could you get this far in your life with a voice like this and not use it?
Yeah, she's a natural. That's crazy. Yeah, I did not know that.
And that also comes across in her other major song in the movie, which, major pun intended, because it is in large part in a major key.
I was going to say, yep.
Special to me. Something that really stands out to me about the way Paul Williams writes is that he seems very comfortable with key changes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that about his music.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's some people can say it's kind of gimmicky, but not the way he does it.
Yeah.
He has got the American Songbook in him deeply.
Yeah.
Yes. And don't get me wrong, there are many songs that I love deeply that have no key changes, but I also love key changes.
A well-positioned one, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
It's really excellent.
You can also hear that if you listen to people that came before. Like, I think Burt Bacharach is somebody who you feel a lot of Paul Williams, like they're basically contemporaries. But like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think about like the Beach Boys and Don't Worry Baby or anything off of Pet Sounds for the most part.
Absolutely.
Have these beautiful moves, and artists like the Beach Boys and the Beatles were deeply influential to Paul Williams.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, it's interesting to me to hear that that Paul Williams is not really someone who had done a lot of rock music before this movie. Because I think the rock songs he writes are great, but also because Special to me, I mean, that just seems like maybe it's just Jessica Harper's incredible vocals, but it just seemed to me like a very assured song.
Yeah, totally. And I forget who says it. It may have been Paul Williams in something I listened to. He describes her singing this song saying she sings to the audience and it changes them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're manic at this point. Like they've watched, spoiler alert, they've watched Beef die on stage.
Yes.
They kind of think it's part of the show.
Right.
And they're almost at a point where they're going to like storm the stage.
Right.
Like Phoenix is brought on to calm them in some way. And she's able to do that. And it's such a shift from the pitch and energy that they were at with the Beef show.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like her soulfulness and the way that Jessica Harper just like puts her all into a song like that.
Yeah. We have to acknowledge too that, I mean, she had acted in some short films and student films before this, but this is her feature film debut.
Yeah. Introducing, I believe she gets one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That song, it starts off with a chord progression that I can see coming from the Great American Songbook. It's kind of like a 1-6-4-5 type of progression that, if you're wondering what that sounds like in the key of B, here it is. So that's kind of where the song sets the scene. And, if it had just gone with that the whole way, it still could be a great song.
Yeah.
But then as verse gives way to what you might call chorus, there are all these interesting modulations. The tonal center is more around B in the verse, but then in the chorus, I mean, so I don't have it fully memorized, but you get some chord changes that sound something like this. And that is the resolution that leads back into the verse once again.
Yeah.
And it's just the way that when you can take a chromatic set of chords and make them sound so coherent. I mean, I always have respect for any songwriter who can do that. Paul Williams does it very gracefully in what he writes. Jessica Harper sings it to perfection. And I mean, there are so many great songs in this soundtrack, but I think Special to me is the one that is maybe the most special to me.
I like the first tune too. Like I feel like it's got a great
Yeah.
energy. I don't have it at the ready to play on guitar, but it has something that I always love, and this is a staple of songwriting around this time, which is the flat 6 as a substitution chord for
Yeah.
the 1. So that song, typically the G chord is going to be the one where after you hear a D chord played, we would go back to G typically, but not always. Instead, you'd move up 1 half step. So you go from D to E flat. That song has kind of like a 50s.
It's like a Sha-na-na.
Exactly.
inspired.
Right. But I love that the song gets that treatment because that's not idiomatic of 50s music.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
idiomatic of 60s and definitely by then the 70s.
It's
So
like
it's like
he's
this
able
fun,
to approach. He wants to evoke the music of the 50s,
Right.
the music of Sha-na-na and the like, but doing it through a more modern lens.
Yes, which is always great. And to me is one of the things that I love about the music in this film and really of the music of the other films we're going to talk about is I feel like you don't lose his voice as a songwriter throughout any of it. It's very cool.
And through many of the songs, you don't lose his voice at all.
That's very true.
Literally, yeah. But which is unlike what happens arguably to Winslow Leach, sadly.
Yeah.
And we should acknowledge too that the opening song "Goodbye Eddie, Goodbye" that's played by what's basically the Paradise House Band.
Right. Juicy Fruits, baby.
They get different names in each of their performances. First, they're the Juicy Fruits. Then, when they're doing that kind of Beach Boys parody or just tribute, depending on what you want to call it, called Upholstery, they're called the Beach Bums.
Right.
And this is
with
a
a
song,
car they're driving out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like there's that scene in Dreamgirls with like the
Cadillac.
The kind of the copycat band.
Yep.
Feels very in a similar spirit to that.
Definitely.
Complete with the
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you. And then the third appearance of this house band is as the Undead. And this is, really, it's a song to build up to Beef's big appearance on the stage. Beef is a performer who has been introduced at this point in the film.
Dude, Beef is crazy.
Yeah.
Beef is nuts, man.
Yeah.
I love Beef.
And the
he's like right out of Velvet Underground.
Oh,
or
Velvet
Goldmine. Thank you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
not to be confused.
Yes.
But and that song is called "Somebody Super Like You." And then Brian De Palma was saying initially he wanted Sha-na-na to be the house band in this movie.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And he couldn't get them, but
Sha-na-na got grease, so it's all good.
But so then when "Somebody Super Like You" comes about, the house band here as the Undead, they're more of like a shock rock group.
Yeah.
I think Brian De Palma said that maybe he tried to cast Alice Cooper in the film as one of those people. I can't remember exactly how it panned out. Alice Cooper's not in the finished product.
Right.
That much we know.
Yeah.
Brian De Palma also had never seen Kiss by that point.
I was going to say it feels
Yeah,
like Kiss.
Absolutely.
It's very fun.
The makeup 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting coincidence. I mean, there's a lot about the existence of this movie that I think it's really interesting how close in time it rubs up to some very similar things, whether it be a band that looks so much like Kiss or the fact that this movie is a year before the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Right.
Yeah.
Has many similar sensibilities.
I just want to very quickly shout out the Juicy Fruits / the Undead / the Beach Bums. I want to shout out those 3 actors because they're not primarily musicians. These guys are primarily comedians. So we've got Archie Hahn, Jeffrey Cominor, and Harry Oblong. And at least 2 of these guys, like they're found at Lemmings. Like,
oh, nice.
Brian De Palma like goes to see Lemmings in LA and finds Archie Hong and I believe Harold Oblong is the other one. And then I think it's Jeffrey Cominor that is brought in separately from the 2 of them and maybe had a little bit more of a musical background. But I find it so interesting to look at these other 2 primarily who are like growing up or like coming up in like LA improv comedy and like sketch comedy primarily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it continues to be underrated how much comedy and comedic sensibility prepares you for all different types of artistic disciplines.
100%. Yeah, you're seeing that a lot in the modern era.
While we're talking about this, we should talk about another actor in Phantom of the Paradise who also was a member of an improv troupe, and that's George Memoli.
Come on, he's awesome.
He's very cool.
He's the heavy, right?
Yes, he plays Arnold Philbin.
There we go. That guy. Yeah.
Swan's right-hand man.
Yeah.
And right away, I mean, from the vibe you get from him in that first scene, which is a great first-person perspective shot from Swan's point of view, it won't come as much of a surprise to know that he appeared in a few Scorsese films. Mean Streets the year before this, later New York, New York. Yeah, George Memoli apparently was a member of an improv group called Ace Trucking Company. But yeah, this is another person who clearly had those skills and is present in this fascinating genre hodgepodge that is Phantom of the Paradise.
Definitely. I think on that note, like one of the things that I think is really fun is how much the Brian De Palma that is about to become very well known.
Yeah.
How much of that style is present in this movie?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned the POV shots, stuff that you would see again in films like Body Double or Blowout. But he's great with these pullback shots. Like I feel Brian De Palma, like if you watched movies like Scarface, like they're full of these pullback shots meant to situate characters in either a giant mess of things or to show how much solitude they're experiencing.
Yeah.
That's there. He also does this fun thing with that upholstery song with the multiple cameras filming the exact same scene at the same time.
Yeah.
This is something that he did in Sisters, which had come out already by then, but is something that he plays with a ton in other films. You've got split screen going. He does like these filters, and the electrocution of beef to me feels very much akin to what you're about to see in Carrie.
Yeah.
All of the Hitchcock elements of this too are like really present in terms of the way he's like trying to mine scenes for suspense. So I think about this movie a lot like how someone might look at the Sugarland Express for Spielberg. It's like the movie that comes out right before he makes this huge thing and everyone goes, okay, you're one of the guys and you do this type of thing. It's the kitchen sink, but in this really cool way where you it's very sumptuous. There's a lot to sink your teeth in.
For sure.
Yeah.
I love the split screen because like you were saying, it really helps build the suspense because you see only in one side of the split screen, like the bomb being planted.
Yeah.
And so the rest of it, you're kind of on the other side of the screen, you're kind of following the scene that has its own kind of trouble that they don't know the true trouble that is coming. It's like one of the singers is like upset about something. I forget exactly because your attention is drawn really in the other direction where you're like, well, something incredibly bad is about to happen. But the juxtaposition of the split screen makes it so that, oh, well, everyone else is just going about the shoot.
And that's classic De Palma. Like confusing you in the moment to figure out where is my eye supposed to be. Like he's really good at that stuff.
Yeah. And I always kind of saw the split screen as his trademark cinematically. And maybe it's just one of them, but that was always, if you're looking for one technique that is the classic De Palma thing, it's the split screen
or the split diopter, which I didn't really see in this movie, but yeah.
And well, he mentioned on the Blu-ray too that the trick of having that kind of depiction while there's a bomb being planted, he got from Touch of Evil.
I thought the same thing. That's cool.
Which I still haven't seen, but I know the shot he's talking about. It's one of the famous long takes in film.
Yep.
While we're still talking about this movie, we might as well say a little bit about Paul Williams, the actor, too, because this is where not only is he the writer of the music for this film, but this is also not the only film we're going to discuss where he makes an on-camera appearance, but it's definitely his most abundant.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
He's so central to this movie.
Yes, at least of what we're discussing. And well, I think, he's really perfectly cast as like this shadowy,
like smarmy.
Yeah.
He's like all in white too. It's like all meant to be a facade.
Yeah. It was, this impresario with a very clear darkness to him.
Right.
Yeah. He was saying that Phil Spector was an inspiration for him.
I love that.
I see it.
I
totally
see it in a big way. Yes.
Yeah. It'll probably, even if you haven't learned up on, even if you're not read up on the stories of how this film was made, it will probably come as no surprise to learn that the label Death Records was initially called Swan Song. And that, well, this famously is Led Zeppelin's label at the time. Once the film was in post-production, that there came the risk of legal action if they kept using Swan Song as a name. And so,
okay, this makes so much sense.
Yeah,
continue, but then I have a thought on this.
There are all these moments in the movie where you see these mats that hastily are superimposed over things that said Swan Song. They don't get everything. There are still a few vestiges of Swan Song throughout the movie, but when it says the Juicy Fruits on the marquee at the beginning, initially there was a Swan Song label there. You can see the seams if you know where to look for them.
It's funny. The only one I caught, and I didn't know why, and I didn't have a chance to look it up, was when they are at an airport. It's when they are introducing Beef as like he's going to be the headliner of the Paradise, and there's like because it's a press conference. There's like a podium.
Yes,
and then the front it has the new logo, I guess the Death Records logo, like superimposed, but it looks off, and I didn't realize that until like my third watch of this movie, and I'm like, once you see it, it's very jarring.
Yeah, and well, admittedly, these are some details that Jack Fisk talks quite a bit about.
Okay.
I mean, as the production designer, he would be very attuned to that.
He'd be the dude. Yeah.
You know, of course, we've established that Paul Williams is this very sincere person in real life, but there's something that feels kind of effortless about this performance in a good way.
I mean, he originally came to LA to be an actor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He thought he was Montgomery Clift. I love that. There's something about him that is very instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. I mean, this just happens. Like people take on a certain look. But he also was a notoriously short guy. He was 5'2". He never really grew. He has two other brothers who were average height. And he says, one of the defining moments of his childhood was that he wasn't growing normally.
Yeah.
And that a doctor in Omaha, where he grew up, was like, I know what to do to get this kid to grow, and gave him like testosterone and growth hormones.
At like 9 years old.
Yeah, exactly. That like accelerated his puberty.
But were not successful in making him grow.
Him tall. Yeah. He's this guy who like developed early, but does not look the part of a sexy record producer. There's something a little bit unusual about his look, but it works for the world of this movie really nicely. Mm-hmm. There's something weird about this guy, but as we've stated, he's very talented. He's super charismatic. And so there's a tractor beam on him.
If you know how to charm people, which he does, and it's kind of unclear in this movie as to how much he has received from like his deal with the devil.
Right.
Like if it is just
that he doesn't
just
age.
Eternal youth.
Yeah.
Or are there other successes that came from that deal? Like that's not really explicitly stated. There is a read on this where some of this success has come to him because of this deal. And then there's just the other read of like, oh, well, but he is like good at what he does, and he knows how to charm people, and he's like not afraid to do whatever it takes and like crush people on his way to the top.
And I think that the part of the Paul Williams performance that left the most vivid impression to me after the first viewing was, well, frankly, it's the end of the character Swan.
Yeah.
That, when you see that he's been unmasked at this pseudo wedding ceremony that is occurring on live television, at the very end, you see he's got this horribly scarred face. Mm-hmm. For a few minutes there, it becomes a horror movie. I mean, not that it isn't horror adjacent for much of its runtime, but it's full on there.
Yeah.
That image is one that Paul Williams really brings home the terror of that scene. There are a couple of layers of, if it's not irony, it's just, the fact that the cantata is about Faust, and then we learn about two characters getting Faustian bargains in the film. Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like Faust cubed or something like that.
Yeah. A lot of that.
Yeah. Early in the movie, there's an exchange, actually the first exchange that Philbin is having with Leach, and Leach is saying something about Faust. Philbin goes, "Who? Faust? What label's he on?"
I love that line.
This is funny though, because there was an actual band active at that time called Faust.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember hearing about that.
A German rock band that they were pretty new at that time.
Still lands great. It's a really funny line. Yeah.
Because they would have been on a label. Well, do we feel like talking about some little details we appreciate now?
There's one line in this movie that I thought was so fun, and it was delivered amazingly, which is when Winslow and Phoenix first meet, and he's hearing her sing, and they kind of make this deal essentially that she'll try to help him get in front of Swan.
Yeah.
And she basically says, like, you think I'm actually good, and you mean that? And he says, like somebody who has carefully thought out his words, I never let my personal desires affect my aesthetic judgment. And
she's like, what?
I know, yeah, and she's like, huh? It's funny to me because it sounds like an artist who is trying to move through the world with certain principles. And that's one that he's figured out. It's funny in the moment, but it's also like a good character beat. You're
exactly.
like, yeah.
Because I do think you're getting some characterization of Winslow Leach before the tragedy that he has to go through at the hands of Swan. You see that like this is a guy who was driven to this kind of madness because of what others have put on him. But he started as a guy that maybe had a few anger issues and potentially other issues that we don't see, but also ultimately tried to be a good person moving through the world as far as we see in the beginning.
Right.
Well, also going back to Swan for a moment. Well, this is not a little detail that comes up in the movie itself. This is in the Brian De Palma interview on the Blu-ray that you see some pages of the original script. And do either of you know what the original name for the character of Swan was?
I maybe heard this, but I've forgotten.
I don't.
Spectre.
Oh,
well, there you go.
Yeah, like James Bond spelling Spectre.
Right.
But
still
TRE.
close enough that I feel like they would get in some legal trouble with that one.
Yeah.
Possibly. But also driving home the phantom horror element of it too.
That's true.
Yes. And that Brian De Palma said in that same interview, the inspiration for this movie is of seeing great music being turned into what he called pap, into like, I think it was because he heard a Beatles song as a muzak.
Yeah, in an elevator.
Yeah. It also functions as a media satire.
Yeah.
That eventually Swan is making choices about what to put on stage because of the viewers it will get.
Right.
And that, he attempts to kill Phoenix because it will be good for publicity.
An assassination live on coast to coast television, that's entertainment.
Sounds to me like
it's very network.
Yeah. And
2 years before Network.
This is before Network.
Yeah.
I mean, how do we know that Patty Chayefsky didn't watch this film?
Yeah.
I mean, he had a lot of other great ideas churning in there, but I mean,
who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, I think these are conversations that people were having a lot at the time. I think media was changing a lot, and media has changed obviously a lot since then. I think we're in a time now, much like this time. And that the way that we consume media is changing so rapidly that it's like it's different like one day to a next, 1 year to a next. And it's largely getting worse.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, particularly people involved in the entertainment industry, were seeing that particularly in the early to mid 70s.
Absolutely. While we're still talking about little details, I mean, something else I want to shout out is there are a few scenes where like there's kind of an interesting blurring of the line between what is real and what could be imagined in the film. And I'm thinking in particular Swan's revelation video.
Yeah.
Later on.
Yeah, funky.
Where it's like Leach is making this very important discovery about the nature of Swan's success and I mean the status of his being. But then it's like this video is edited. It's giving kind of the perfect exposition. And I don't mind it. Like it's, I do not have any issue with how that serves a function in terms of writing. But it's funny to me too. It takes me back to some thoughts I had when we did our found footage episode. It's like someone had to edit this.
Yeah, very true.
But the devil, I think, does say to him that part of what Swan has to do is watch that video every day.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that it would be edited down to actually make that possible.
He's like, I'm a busy guy. I got things to do.
Yeah.
It's just the highlight reel of when I sold my soul to the devil.
The devil clearly has a good in-house editor.
Exactly. This is a truly little detail. I like when Swan is editing Winslow's voice and he just says filters, Dolbys.
Yeah.
Nice.
And
I just like how vague it is. And he's just like moving, knobs,
faders,
and faders.
And Swan is in this room that is just kind of like a synth lover's paradise.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, Leach is in that
Yeah.
room.
Mhm.
Swan is on the other side at the console. Early in the movie, too, I mean, in the first interaction between Leach and Philbin, I noticed they were wearing shirts of basically the same color. And that I couldn't determine who the faces were. I wondered if they have different faces on them. This is like a kind of a light blue, sky blue shade that both of their garments are in. And that on Leach's sweater, I wondered, is that maybe like supposed to be Gustav Mahler there?
I couldn't tell. It's someone with a monocle, I think.
Yeah. So it had the look of like old timey composer.
Yeah.
Which is very in character for him.
I also thought maybe philosopher.
Yes, but for Philbin's, I had no idea who it was.
Yeah. You don't get as clear of a view on that
Yeah.
one. Before we move away, we have to talk about this movie's weird success in Winnipeg. Do you guys know about this?
I do.
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like this movie does not actually do very well in most places. But the two cities that it does well in are Winnipeg and Paris.
Mhm.
And Paris seems to make a little more sense to me.
Yeah.
Winnipeg just feels so truly random. Like Winnipeg, this movie is so successful that they have put on Phantom of the Paradise like conventions since then.
Yeah.
Phantom Palooza. And like the movie was so successful there that when you talk to people at the time, they're like, I didn't realize this movie wasn't successful everywhere. Like it was the biggest movie in this town for like a year.
I
Wow.
wonder what it is about Winnipeg.
I read some articles on this and no one can really place why.
Yeah.
It's very odd.
Makes
but
me think-
it's like so cool.
It's such a cult movie that for whatever reason, it really spoke to the sensibilities of this one specific town in this one specific country. Yeah, that is
Yeah, it's
freaking
so weird.
weird.
I quote
Yeah.
this on my Letterboxd review, but there was a woman who was talking to CBC on this years later, a Winnipeg resident, and she said, you can get your ashes made into a vinyl album. When I die, I want them to be made into the Phantom of the Paradise soundtrack. That's how
Oh
much
my
I love this
gosh.
movie. And it seems
Wow.
like she is not alone amongst Winnipegians.
Wow. And it makes me think of that Documentary Now episode that's about a fictional Al Capone festival in Iceland.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of fandom.
Definitely.
Yeah. While we're still on the movie, and we talked a little bit about editing a moment ago, there's some really genius editing in Phantom of the Paradise itself, not just in this Faustian bargain video. Let's credit the editor of the film, Paul Hirsch, that there were some scenes, particularly exterior scenes. So this movie shot in, I think, primarily 3 different cities. It was New York. I want to say it was Houston, Texas, and then LA. And that there are a few different points, like 2 different scenes I can think of that are meant to show what is supposed to be a coherent exterior that is filmed in 3 different places. This is when Winslow Leach is entering Swan's mansion for the first time. You see him getting out of a cab outside of what is clearly Central Park. The house he walks up to is in, or it's not Houston, it's Dallas, Texas. The house he walks up to is in Dallas, and the interior is the Doheny mansion at the AFI Conservatory.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then when he's become the Phantom and we see that first person shot from Leach's point of view, the place that he is walking up to, that's New York City Center on 55th Street. Then the back alley where, it's clearly behind a stage, that is BAM in Brooklyn.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then the interior of the theater, that's the Majestic Theater, I believe, also in Dallas.
All right.
And you wouldn't even know watching the movie.
Well, shout out to Paul Hirsch, who was a Brian De Palma regular at that time and also notably edited Star Wars.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Julian, do you know where Brian De Palma and Jessica Harper went to college?
Sarah Lawrence,
Mhm.
my alma mater. Yes, and Brian De Palma, I mean, I think to be specific, I think he did the grad program there.
Yeah.
But Jessica Harper was an undergrad there. I'm glad that came up.
Very cool. That's about all I have.
I think that's everything on Phantom of the Paradise. What a movie. We definitely could have done an entire episode just on Phantom of the Paradise, but
Mhm.
we loved Paul Williams' work so much that we wanted to be able to do a close-up on him. So now we are moving on to Bugsy Malone, and I am super excited to talk about this movie. We mentioned this is directed by Alan Parker.
Yeah, written
this
and
is-
directed, yeah.
Yeah, written and directed by Alan Parker. And this is not the first Alan Parker movie we have done because we talked to Fame during our high school movie cycle.
Dude, I felt a lot of similarity.
You really do see. I'm
Yeah.
glad
between
that
Bugsy Malone and
I'm
Fame.
glad that we have talked Fame. I think it is
Yeah.
very informative for this movie,
Mhm.
Definitely.
which comes out in 1976, again, written and directed by Alan Parker and starring Jodie Foster and Scott Baio most prominently. That we should say that Bugsy Malone, though, is not to be confused with director Busby Berkeley or any of his movies. Largely MGM musicals, including Ziegfeld Girl, Take Me Out to the Ball Game, and For Me and My Gal.
There we go.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And while we get a glimpse into the life of our titular character, Bugsy Malone, is not to be confused with A Bug's Life. This is the 1998 Pixar film. It's sort of a Seven Samurai, Magnificent Seven, from a computer animation lens. Shout out to past guest on the pod, Idris Goodwin, who has been on record saying that we need to put more respect on A Bug's Life name. And I would agree. It's a worthy Pixar film. It is not like third tier Pixar. It's good.
Oh yeah, no. This is when Pixar, I think early Pixar is when it's at its best. And I think this is an example of that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that since I was a kid. I'll be able to confirm your opinions a little more once I've seen it again. Bugsy Malone, while we're getting into this, I mean, we've talked about a few phonetic similarities, and one that also occurred to me is that Bugsy Malone is not to be confused with Brigsby Bear.
Yeah.
Which is the 2017 film directed by Dave McCary and co-written by Kyle Mooney of SNL fame. It also has, interestingly, it has Mark Hamill in it. I always got the impression that this was like the Good Neighbor movie.
Yeah.
This Good Neighbor is a comedy group that Kyle Mooney originated in. Yeah, I've been curious about this movie. I have not yet seen it, but it's always just had an interesting sort of, seemingly kind of uncanny sensibility that piqued my interest.
Yeah. And if you're thinking kids getting up to no good, trying to act older than their age, and co-opting the behavior of gangsters, we really should not confuse Bugsy Malone with Home Alone.
I like that.
I'm a big fan of the Home Alone.
Had to go there.
Yeah.
I mean, the letters are all there. It's just where the spaces are.
Exactly.
And maybe to state the blatantly obvious that Bugsy Malone, though this is the one that comes first, it is not to be confused with Bugsy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the gangster biopic from 1991, directed by Barry Levinson and starring Warren Beatty as the titular Bugsy. This is based on Bugsy Siegel, the actual gangster.
Correct.
Notorious from the first half of the 20th century.
And that is famously the movie where he met his now wife, Annette Bening, who took him off the market.
Yes.
And this is probably a good time because I don't know when else we would bring it up. Paul Williams famously also wrote the, quote unquote, bad songs for Ishtar.
Yes.
Starring Warren Beatty.
There we go.
Yeah. And I still haven't seen Ishtar, though. As of this recording, I do have a plan to finally see it because
Yes.
at the end of this month, June, that Film at Lincoln Center is doing an Elaine May retrospective. And of course, they're showing Ishtar. I have a ticket booked.
Excellent.
As
Wonderful.
of this recording. So by the end of June, I will have seen it and I will be very eager to talk about it.
Well, I'm sure friend of the pod, James Kodayanis, will be really happy to talk to you about Ishtar.
Heck, I mean, I'd be surprised if he's not there at the screening
Exactly.
too.
Yeah, you might run into him
Multiple screenings.
Yes.
Shout out to you, James. Thank you for holding the Elaine May flag high in the air for all to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, James. But so Bugsy Malone, I mean, we've said a little bit about what this movie is going for, but I mean, plot wise, what is Bugsy Malone about?
Good question. So it's Prohibition era New York City, and mob boss Fat Sam Stacchetto is dealing with the introduction of a dangerous new weapon called the splurge gun. One of his best henchmen, Roxy Robinson, is splurged by men associated with rival mob boss Dandy Dan, and Dan is closing in on the rest of Fat Sam's crew. But this movie isn't called Fat Sam. It's called Bugsy Malone. Bugsy is an Irish-Italian ex-boxer and supposed boxing promoter, somewhat adjacent to Fat Sam, but largely separate from that part of the story. Bugsy's troubles don't start nearly as dire as Sam's. He's met an aspiring singer by the name of Blousy Brown and just wants to woo her and help her achieve her dream of becoming a Hollywood movie star. However, as Sam's crew continues to get splurged and Bugsy becomes more desperate, these two stories begin to intertwine. This may cause complications for Bugsy and Blousy because Sam's lady friend and star show girl Tallulah has her sights set on him. So, will Bugsy be able to ignore Tallulah's advances and help Blousy achieve her showbiz dreams, or will they all get caught in the crossfire of the splurge war?
Very well done.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
It's a total curio.
It's so fun.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is very fun. Had you guys seen this movie before?
No, I think, are we all new to this
Yeah,
one?
we are. I
Yeah.
think we're all new.
We
to
all
it,
are
yeah.
new to this one. I had heard of it, and I think, maybe a little similarly to how I first heard of Phantom of the Paradise, it maybe was just going through the Alan Parker filmography and noting, okay, what noteworthy films has he directed? And this is his film debut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as an artist and a father myself, it was very heartening to hear that the origins of this movie came from him spending time with his kids
and like telling them stories
exactly,
about this
yeah.
gangster.
I mean, Alan Parker has had like this really, really fascinating career, mostly as a director, but also as a writer. And so I just think it's hilarious that this was the thing that he wanted to make so bad.
Yeah.
But also like sweet. You can tell sometimes when an actor has a kid that's like between the ages of 4 and 8 because they suddenly are in like a kid's movie and they want to do something that their kids can either see or be on set for. And it's like, this was Alan Parker's moment for that.
And Alan Parker is also English. So he's approaching this from the lens of, oh, I'm going to make essentially a satirical American gangster movie. Like basically the only things he knows about America is like what he has seen in movies. He hasn't even, I think, really spent that much time here at that point in his life. And most of this movie is shot in the UK.
Yes. At the famed Pinewood Studios, which is not very surprising. I mean, I think you watch it and you can tell that these must be sets. And, you know, something that it's come up throughout this cycle. And also, I think it's evident in all three of the movies we're discussing for this episode that artifice is an important element of them.
Yeah.
That's not at all a detraction on any of these films. It's, it's just that they are very conscious works of artifice where maybe the sets are not supposed to look real, but they are meant to look expressive. We have talked and we will talk a little more about puppets.
Yeah.
Clearly not real creatures, and that doesn't take anything away from them.
Yeah.
I think actually the artificiality of them adds to the intrigue.
I'm glad you're talking about this because I feel like I was able to fully give myself over to this movie as if they were puppets. Like, just in the sense of like, I hear some people talking about this movie and they're like, oh, I get it. It's like a metaphor for kids at play. And I'm like, well, sure. Like, that's a perfectly fine and valid read. But like, I was watching this like just like it was any satirical gangster movie. Like, I don't actually think it changed my perception of the film that they were played by children. Other than it maybe made it more entertaining for me. But it did. I don't think it took anything away from it. I think it's a very unique way of approaching this material, but I don't think it diminishes it at all.
You just get this like very unique experience. Like, I have never seen a movie that feels like this one.
Yeah.
Like, this movie shot really well.
Yeah.
It's very competently made. And there is that weird thing. I think we do have to talk about the fact that the kids themselves are not singing. They're adults that are singing.
That is the weirdest part of this movie for me. Everything else I enjoy.
Yeah. Both Paul Williams and Alan Parker have been on record saying that they don't really know if they still feel good about that. Yeah.
I think it comes from Alan Parker coming from a place where actually, even though he does go on to direct musicals, I don't think he has a super strong musical background at the point that when he is going into this film. And so he's saying like, oh, I don't want those kids in their like squeaky voices,
right.
Which is like, as a teacher, like as a person that has taught children singing in like middle school choir, these kids are at an age where you absolutely can find kids that have like strong vocal fundamentals.
Right.
Like, and that is underlined by the fact that this is a show that's been done on stage.
Right. That's a good point.
Successfully with child actors doing their actual singing. So I do think the casting may have had to be slightly different. Like, I don't know if I genuinely do not know if Jodie Foster and Scott Baio have the vocal chops to be able to pull off these songs. I do not have that knowledge because we don't get to actually hear them attempt these songs.
There is one actor in this, I have to say, and it doesn't do a lot of singing, so that's great. Cannot not be in this film, and that is John Cassisi.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
He is lights out. Like, he's so amazing. It's so campy, but it's like perfect. He's so good.
I love the origin story of how they found him. I mean, it's crazy. Like, Alan Parker goes to this like Brooklyn middle school and is like, who's the naughtiest boy in class? And like every kid points towards this kid.
Honestly, anytime he's on screen, I'm into it. Like, you set up in your setup. This is not Fat Sam's, but It kind of should be.
It starts with his voiceover and like
Totally.
his henchmen getting offed, and he owns the club. Like everything, the action revolves around him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's debatable. I mean, because Bugsy Malone, I mean, as a main character, like he does really get a moment at the end of the movie.
He does. But he's the glue to everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have a point I'll make about that momentarily. But yeah, it's almost like John Cassisi here is like, precocious is not the right word, but sometimes you meet kids who at age 10 already feel like they could be like the guy behind the deli counter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though John Cassisi goes on to like own a construction company.
Oh, wow.
There's some unfortunate details, I think, about that too.
Yeah.
Like he might have been a little bit too much Fat Sam.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of great lines. The narration is very well written in this movie. The one that I had to write down, I'll try to do it in my best kid voices. Whatever game it was everybody was playing, sure as eggs is eggs, Roxy the Weasel had been scrambled.
Nice.
Right at the beginning of the movie. And I think, seeing details like that, along with like the clear fact that this is like gangster pastiche, it knows it's not trying to be real. I think as the movie began, I had a moment of like, let's fucking go.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
how I felt as well.
And
Yeah.
then, admittedly, as it went a little further on, I had a few moments where I started to wonder, it's like, can I go with this for a whole movie? Ultimately, yes. The answer is yes. I think I was able to stick with it.
Like I was all in on this movie the whole time.
There's one moment in this movie where they introduced the Leroy character.
Right.
I feel like that's where the movie kind of lost me a little bit. I'm
it
like,
doesn't really feel
they
necessary.
kind of feel like they need to give Bugsy something to do. It's like, as you say,
That's
he's like,
the thing. Because
Yeah.
it's there. So much of this movie is Fat Sam's movie.
yes.
And so suddenly they need to expand Bugsy's storyline beyond Fat Sam
Right.
and beyond Blousy.
Yes. Yeah. And be like, he was in the boxing world before, or
You're
whatever.
like, look, he wasn't bullshitting. He
Exactly.
actually knows the guys at the boxing gym.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also, though, I like the boxing song. Like, I think the boxing
okay.
song
Yeah.
has like
All right.
really good editing.
Let's go. That is the song of this movie
It's a
for
great
me.
song. Yeah.
I love. Is it So You Want to Be a
Yeah.
Boxer? I have a funny story about that. I'll get to that later. But yes, I love that song.
And I just really like the editing, like the feet and like it's like chalk or something,
Yes,
and it
yeah.
does like a tss, tss.
Yep.
It's so unique and interesting, and like all these different kids, they're like punching at the camera like a traditional kind of like boxer movie would be.
Mhm.
I think it's
Yeah.
great, and I do think it's kind of funny also that Leroy is not someone that wants to be a boxer. But this whole song, the lyrics are basically like all these other boxers are like, "Hey, put that kid in the ring, and we're gonna beat the shit out
Yes,
of him."
it's true.
And
Yeah.
he's like running off, and they're like, no, come back. Like, it's very funny.
Yeah.
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 But it does feel like it's in a
it's
different
shoehorned
movie.
in. It feels like it's shoehorned in a little bit. It feels a little half baked, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of likable. The Dandy Dan kid,
Yeah. that
funny
kid's
as hell
great.
too. He's great.
I do
Yeah.
think because they completely demolish Fat Sam's crew.
Yeah.
Like, he loses everyone.
He does.
They need Bugsy to find somebody else,
Right.
like to come along for the ride. I think that's why they introduced Leroy, and then Leroy is with him when they find
Right.
like all these other kids.
Right. And he
down
becomes
at,
like
Yeah.
his
the
sidekick.
kitchen.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's something that could have been done
Earlier in the film. Thank
and
you.
honestly, I think you could cut Blousy from this movie. Like, largely. I think for me, Blousy is one of the weaker characters. And I'm sorry to this child who's now an adult woman. One of the weaker performances also, she was not the original Blousy cast. Like, the original Blousy, whose name I could not find, like, grew way taller than Scott Baio, like, hit her growth spurt. And they were like, oh, we got to get this girl out of here.
Yeah.
So Florrie Duggar, then she had already been cast in this movie, but she had not been cast as Blousy. So then she is brought in to play Blousy when this other kid is nixed for growing too tall. I think that she is serviceable, but I do think that she feels like maybe the least adept.
Right.
But I also think as a character, I don't know that there's that much juice there.
Right.
Mhm.
I feel like she kind of takes some of Jodie Foster's minutes,
Yeah,
so to
totally.
speak, in this movie. I was kind of expecting Jodie Foster to be a larger presence in the film.
Absolutely.
Than she
Because she's
was.
on all the posters. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, she's the big name that comes out of this, like Scott Baio also. But
Yeah.
And it's
to
the
a different
same
extent.
year as Taxi Driver.
Exactly.
Same year as Freaky Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a crazy time for her.
You know, maybe it's hindsight that makes us think Jodie Foster should have had a bigger role.
Well, Jodie Foster is also, I think, giving the best kid performance in this movie, like by a mile. And that's not to undercut like John Cassisi, who I think is also giving an excellent kid performance. But Jodie Foster just feels like the most like a serious actor
Right.
of any of these kids.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, John Cassisi is maybe like a great case of like natural casting, but then like
Yeah.
Jodie Foster would be the most trained. by
Yeah,
this
totally.
point.
So we've already talked about the shtick of this being a fully child cast, including Jodie Foster and Scott Baio. But beyond this being just a fun angle, how do you guys think the choice of casting affects the way that this story is told?
Well, I think that something that clicked for me watching this movie is that as a kid, there's a lot about stories of organized crime that you don't understand, but there are the idea of having a gangster story told with kids where a lot of like the deeper ins and outs of these stories are done away with, and a lot of the main signifiers are what are really delved into and what are really built up. It just kind of made sense to me.
Yeah.
That, I mean, weirdly, I mean, you could call this a precocious interest of my own, but that at age 11, I started to take an interest in the history of organized crime.
Of course you did.
Well, yeah, I remember like doing a project in 5th grade where I learned about like, it was like when I first learned about Al Capone and Bugsy Siegel and Mickey Cohen and people like that. Those are like some of the seedier details that you find out, you know, once you start watching like The Godfather or Goodfellas or The Sopranos. Because you know this conceit of how it's told, the stakes are lower.
Yeah.
And more fun can be had with it. I mean, it walks an interesting line. To me, like the song of the movie is Bad Guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We're the very best at being bad.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's just that number. Bugsy Malone, I think, is not even present for it, but it felt like a great sort of
Again,
like,
not present for
yeah. It's not that it stylistically calls back to West Side Story, but having like, you know, characters do a fairly whimsical song talking about how they're the bad guys.
Right.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
that, you know, felt
On the streets of New York.
exactly.
Right.
That felt familiar. Maybe this is a good moment to start talking about the Paul Williams music in the movie too. That I think this is where, to me at least, like his being steeped in the great American songbook tradition was most visible musically.
Yeah.
That the songs in this, I mean, you know, not like there aren't great key changes in those classic songs, but they're less laden with key changes as in, say, Phantom of the Paradise. They're a little more committed to their keys. I don't think I found any chord progression in a song in Bugsy Malone to be all that surprising, but they did feel coherent. I think I got where he was coming from with it.
I feel like My Name is Tallulah. Isn't it like the second chord of that like a diminished chord?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
it's got like a really
Yeah.
fun little flip on it. But yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think the numbers in this movie are very cheeky and kind of silly, and they work. I will say, I think this movie has some of the more, I'm going to say the word forgettable here, in that like, I don't think this music is as strong as what's in Phantom of the Paradise or the movie that we're about to talk about next, personally. But I also think it's kind of part of the vibe of this movie,
Yeah.
that this movie is kind of washing over you
Mhm.
mostly. It works fine for the scene, and that it's not like uber memorable either. It just is kind of like part of the time, and then when it's done, it's done.
I feel that way about some songs, but I think Bad Guys is a great song. And
Yeah.
I think Fat Sam's Grand Slam Speakeasy is a great song.
Mm-hmm.
Both of these really stuck with me and I think are very catchy and I think are very interesting. I think that part of the problem is that this movie introduces like a few, I think, unnecessary ballads. Like
Right.
like you've got the kid who's like
the
a
dancer.
cleaner
Yeah.
that's like a tap dancer. Like his
Tomorrow or
song,
something?
yeah,
Yeah.
Tomorrow. I see they're trying to underline like he and Blousy are both being
Right.
told like come back tomorrow. Like he's what Blousy could be, where it's like, oh, he's been telling me to come back tomorrow for months. I see why they would want a song to underline this, but I don't think it's a great song in the structure of the film. And
Yeah.
I also think like Blousy's song later is like in a similar kind of way, like, oh, she's singing about her breakup, but it's like I don't really care that much.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel that with, some of these songs that they're fun in the moment. They don't maybe leave the strongest impression. But Bad Guys to me was like that left the strongest impression. And I think that it, it speaks to its power that it gets the callback.
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
Yeah.
I will say too, I do think that this movie suffers because adults are singing the
Yeah.
songs. They feel almost divorced from the people themselves in the
Yeah.
film.
Mhm.
So there's like separation on screen, and so I feel separation as a viewer from like the way these songs work.
I'm glad that you said that. I think that's a very interesting point. I absolutely see what you're saying with that, because like if you look at Tomorrow, the song, there are things about it that make it an interesting song. Like it's not a bad song by any means. I don't think any of these songs, this or the Blousy ballad that I'm talking
Yeah.
about, I don't think either of them are bad songs. And some of these are even songs that Paul Williams later covers on some of his own albums. And so I do think part of my issue with it is what you're referring to, is
Yeah.
that like if you look at Tomorrow, it feels separate from that character.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, or it's maybe like, sometimes in musicals you get like one character really has their moment and it feels like it's like that song is aiming for it to be this character's moment, but it just doesn't feel completely fulfilled.
This is where the Fame comparison comes to me, which is I feel like this movie has a very similar vibe to Fame in that we're kind of asked to just enter this world and let things organically happen with the people inside of it. I know that there is like a plot here of Dandy Dan coming in, trying to take over Fat Sam's whole stuff, but like calling this movie Bugsy Malone and then not really giving Bugsy Malone much to do,
Yeah.
I think kind of unplugs part of the narrative drive of this movie
Mhm.
in a way that reminded me a lot of Fame, where it's like, here we get the janitor who is just like, all he needs is his big break, but we don't really see him come back very much after that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So he kind of has his moment the way that I think some characters in Fame get them, and the movie stands still for them. And then maybe we're off to something else,
Exactly,
which is fine. I mean, I think we all enjoyed that movie in some respects.
Yeah.
In a way that I think we also kind of enjoyed Bugsy Malone. There's like a shared DNA here in terms of how the movie lands and how disparate things that are happening all become one experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I think that aspect of Fame that you pointed out, though, like I think of that movie and I don't have any criticism of that, partially because that's a more slice of life movie.
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't really either, but I feel it more in this film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see that here. Well, it's we're saying a few details about the music in Bugsy Malone, might as well demonstrate a little bit of
Yeah.
it. But in Bad Guys, I mean, I think that's a song to me that like the part of it that really lingers in my mind is that chorus sort of resolution that it has. And I'm not going to play this perfectly, but what I can remember of it includes chord changes that go something like this. Kind of like a I mean, I have to
We
remember
need
to
two
pull
mics.
remember to pull the mic up, and I'm playing that as if it's more of like the very end right there. But it's all like pretty firmly locked in one key, the key of G, with a few modulations that still don't really color outside of the lines of that great American songbook style. You get a few chromatic chords there, but everything is ultimately leading to a resolution.
I feel like I was noticing a lot of chromatic movement throughout these three films. I think particularly this one and the next one.
Yeah.
So this was one. I feel like they might also do it maybe somewhere in Fat Sam's Grand Slam Speakeasy. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it will come to me later. It's not always the chords themselves. Sometimes it's just the melody.
Yeah.
But I feel like Paul Williams is someone that he is sometimes playing with the chord progression itself, sometimes playing with melody, but he often does not stick like diatonically.
Yeah, it's interesting, and that like, well, I already made one Nashville reference in this conversation, and then there were like a few, like actually there was more than one song in Bugsy Malone where I heard a chord progression that actually made me think of Keith Carradine's one of his big songs from Nashville, "It Don't Worry Me."
Yeah.
And it's specifically the way that both that song and then these songs from Bugsy Malone begin, where like in "It Don't Worry Me," Keith Carradine plays a G major to a B dominant 7, which sounds like this. And the resolution comes back to G there. And the two songs where I remember hearing that in Bugsy Malone were "Bad Guys" and at the beginning of "My Name is Tallulah." It's just interesting to think about those being close in time. They're only a year apart, but there were some moments watching Bugsy Malone, admittedly, where I was thinking, and in a favorable way, it's like, I guess that did come out in the 70s.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of uncanny that there are some things about it that feel a little timeless, that it's like, it doesn't feel like it has like that new Hollywood grit to it, but it also doesn't feel like it's got the sheen of something from the present day.
Yeah. I mean, I also think that it works really well for the kind of movie that it is. I mean, this is in many respects a movie for kids.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot in it for the adults, but I think also if you look at songs from the American Songbook, this is family friendly fare. It really is.
Yes.
I mean, it's the kind of music that I think is meant to feel ubiquitous. The way that I think a lot of children's fare, I think, is going to also kind of flirt with this one size fits all kind of energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely see that. And well, to speak to it, to the audience, like not directly right now, but to speak to the point of the audience that this film is directed at. I mean, I had some funny, like, we don't usually have a comparison corner in episodes like this where we discuss more than one film, but there were a few comparisons coming to mind as I was watching it actively. The first one, I think, which is pretty unsurprising, is to Hook.
Yeah.
Just seeing like all these bands of kids together. I mean, I thought a lot of the Lost Boys, they're only a part of the story in Hook, but they leave a very strong impression. I felt like I was just watching the Lost Boys many times over at points in Bugsy Malone. And then I was starting to think, well, I mean, and interestingly, all the movies I'm going to point out here are movies that come after Bugsy Malone. That the next thing I think of, it's like, well, when you consider a certain plot of this this huge epic, that this almost feels like a whimsical take on a chapter of Once Upon a Time in America, because that's a movie where, like, a crucial part of the story is when you see the main gang as kids. But then there was a point, like the character of Bugsy Malone, and that we've talked about the strengths and weaknesses of how this character is developed. But, the fact of this being someone who's like not the head honcho in a gang, like being kind of a side character, maybe someone who is active, but mostly wants to walk his own way, do things for himself. I couldn't place it while watching at first. And I was like, I know there's something else I watched recently that has a character like that, but I couldn't place it. And then there was a scene in around the middle of the movie where a meeting takes place amongst a clearing in the forest. And then it hit me. Bugsy Malone is, in some ways, it's Miller's Crossing.
I was just going to say.
I was thinking about that a lot because I only just recently watched Miller's Crossing for the first time, like over the last holiday season.
Yeah.
And honestly, I like this movie more than Miller's Crossing. I'm sorry. Miller's Crossing, I was like, I have no idea what's going on at any point in Miller's Crossing. I'm so confused about who anybody is and why they're upset at each other and like what the rivalries are. Whereas this movie, I could actually follow in those respects.
I kind of land the other way, but to be fair, like the last time I saw Miller's Crossing, it was a rewatch.
I've only seen that movie once, but I remember liking it. I thought it was good.
I think, if you like, obviously I'm in a different place on it, but if you give it a second chance, I think you'll like it more.
I think that you guys like this style of movie a lot more than I do.
Okay, fair
enough.
I don't think that like the kind of gangster genre is always for me.
Yeah,
unless it's played entirely by children.
There you go.
But otherwise, you're giving it the hi-hat.
Yeah, exactly.
But I have to say too that it's Miller's Crossing, but for kids.
For kids. Yeah. Very good. That was
Yeah,
excellent.
we don't see a hula hoop in Bugsy Malone, but if only it could be retconned into the story.
Totally. So this movie also has these kind of like child-friendly substitutions. We talked about the splurge gun.
Mhm.
Did you guys have any like favorite child-friendly substitutions or like kind of ways of telling the story that were specific to it being child-friendly?
Yeah, I mean, the splurge gun is fun. I think the subtle detail in this that's in the filmmaking that really sells it is that for a while when that is used, really up until the end, anytime any of these kids get splurged, it's a freeze frame.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually extremely effective.
Totally.
It takes the finality a little bit further.
Yeah.
Using cinematic language. I really like that. I
That's a
thought that
very
was
good
really
point.
smart. But yeah, and then like what they're like, their drinks all get spiked with like seltzer or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when Dandy Dan is going after all the rackets, he goes to Fat Sam's sarsaparilla
That's
racket.
right. That's right. I love he's like, not the sarsaparilla racket.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, I think that I didn't really pick up any substitutions other than what's already been stated. That
the cars too.
Yeah.
They're pedaling, right?
Well,
Yeah.
also pedaling, nice.
Yeah. And they pipe in actual car sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Also, that because it's for kids, this is a movie that can't have any alcohol too.
Yeah.
And there's that scene when Fat Sam has that outburst at the bartender.
Right.
And it's not like the point of like the absence of alcohol is made a very big deal of, but that's like a good example of the kind of thing that would absolutely happen in Goodfellas or The Sopranos, just for kids.
Yeah.
I think now that's like a pretty good setup for the point that I said I was going to make earlier, but was saving, which is to talk about the end of the movie.
Yeah. This ending is nuts.
It is nuts. I mean, I couldn't help but notice that, Phantom of the Paradise and Bugsy Malone, 2 films in a row where a
cacophony.
Well, but also specifically that a live performance is interrupted by violence.
Right.
Yeah. Luckily,
Relative
that does
to
not
their
happen in the
worlds,
next
yeah.
movie.
Right. But then in Bugsy Malone, I mean, what would normally be this massacre in a straight gangster movie, because no one's actually injured there, they're just covered in cream. That's what can give way to this callback to Bad Guys where they say, what if we're good instead?
Yeah, I mean, I again was so bought into the reality of this movie that because I watched this twice, but when I first got to the ending and kids actually they're getting splurged, and then you see like some major characters get splurged.
Mhm.
You see like Tallulah.
Yeah.
I think she's kind of the first major character that we see, and I had a moment of like, oh my god, I'm still in the reality of like, you get splurged, you're dead,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I can't believe they killed off Tallulah, and
Yeah.
then it's like everybody, obviously, and I don't think this ending works if it's not a child cast. I think the film wants to leave us with a moral, and I think that there are kind of 2 ways that you can spin it. I think you can either say like, oh, look at it in an uplifting way, like some of the lyrics for the kind of Bad Guys reprise is
Mhm.
you give a little love and it all comes back to you, is kind of what it moves into in the finale. And so, you build a bridge with the people who are different than you, and you put love and kindness in the world, and it benefits all of us, and it'll come back to you. That's like the generous read. And then the darker messaging can be like, well, no one wins in war.
Yeah.
And like
That's true.
it's gonna end up bad for all you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also, you stated this a little bit up top. I also just kind of took this as an ending that is leaning into the satire of
Yeah.
gangster films, which is
Yeah.
that like there's a bunch of overgrown kids
Yeah.
that just never matured out of
Like the school,
interactions.
schoolyard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for this to be the outcome that everybody is just in a giant food fight,
Yeah.
that's another hook comparison there, big
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
What's really happening here? Like that's really what's happening.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at any other gangster movie and a bunch of people just blow each other up, it's like this is the inner monologue
Yeah.
of the people doing violence. Is they haven't matured out of the cafeteria or schoolyard.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that, there were, like, we've all talked about things along the way in Bugsy Malone that we are either in or out with, like things, strengths and weaknesses of the film. But I thought the ending was great, maybe even the strongest part of the film to me.
Any little details to shout out in Bugsy Malone?
Not too many on my part. I mean, we have to note that it's not the singer, but there is a Michael Jackson credited
That is true.
in the film.
I noticed that.
As Razzmatazz, Fat Sam's personal pianist, performer at the Grand Slam Speakeasy.
So maybe a Paul Williams proxy.
And who I think has Paul Williams' voice in the song that he sings.
Ah, yeah. There we go.
He has the lead vocal in Fat Sam's Grand Slam Speakeasy.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah. And Paul Williams' voice is unmistakable in the title song of the film,
that's
too.
True. Big time.
Then, also, coming off of Phantom of the Paradise, I couldn't help but notice that 2 films in a row that feature secret doors.
Yeah.
In Phantom of the Paradise, that you have the mirror door that's triggered by a candle switch,
right,
by Swan. And then at the very beginning of Bugsy Malone, I mean, the front is that this is a bookshop, which is also kind of a funny play on the term bookie. But then, if you know the password, the secret door, that's really the what leads into the speakeasy.
Yep.
Also, I mean, Madeline, you pointed out the connection to my alma mater of 2 people involved in Phantom of the Paradise, and I couldn't help but note the lyric in one of the songs in Bugsy Malone that Tallulah had her training in North Carolina.
That is true.
Yeah.
Very nice.
That's what I've got.
I wanted to come back to the boxer song because I was watching this movie. That song comes on, and I have like a physical response. I'm like, what's going on here? I've heard this song before, and I'm like, where have I heard this song? In high school and in college, I listened to a lot of hip hop, and one artist that I had some affinity for was somebody named Dizzy Rascal. He's a grime rapper from the UK. Familiar with him?
Not deeply, but I know.
Okay, all right, cool. He has a track on his 2007 album Maths in English called Wannabe that directly lifts this melody. And it's like even a bunch of the words there's like some slight changes, but it's like, so you want to be a gangster and all that stuff. And it was that. And it was hilarious to me, but also kind of made me think a little bit about how Alan Parker, British filmmaker, I was wondering like if this movie is the kind of film that somebody like Dizzy Rascal, would have grown up with.
Yeah.
And that like that melody is there in his head. And he's like putting stuff together and he's like, let's interpolate that and make that a hook.
I like that.
Which was really kind of fun for me. So I was like, where the hell have I heard this? And it was that.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah.
One thing I really like is after all of Fat Sam's crew has been wiped out other than Knuckles, and it's just him and Knuckles, and they're in the office, and they put like standees in the window like to make it look like the other guys are still there.
Yeah.
I think that's very funny.
Yeah.
It's very Home Alone.
Exactly. Very Home Alone. I have a conspiracy theory.
Let's go.
So there's a scene early on where someone, I forget who, is getting splurged in like a restaurant, and there's a violin player like going through the restaurant, and I'm watching this kid, and I'm like, that kid's actually playing. I feel very confident about that. I play violin. I've played violin since I was 10. And I was like, that kid is definitely playing live. I'm very confident of that. And so I'm paying attention to him. He kind of like backs down behind like a table in the back corner to escape what's going on in the restaurant. And when you go to Dandy Dan's home later, there's a string quartet.
There is.
That I hear, and I'm like, before I even see them, I hear them, and I'm like, these kids are playing live.
I was going to bring this up. I do think that the instrumentalists are playing live.
Yeah. And then when the camera cuts over to them, it is the same violinist in that string quartet.
Oh, sweet.
So.
There we go.
I don't think that's a conspiracy theory.
No,
I think that's just great observation.
Very nice. I mean, hey, you can't fall asleep on the musicians.
Exactly.
It's like The Help.
Yeah.
You know, they know all the little details.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think like he's one of Dandy Dan's guys, and he may not be the one with the gun, but he's the one keeping an eye on things.
Yes. Love it.
And
Very
keeping the tunes flowing.
Well, are we ready to talk about the Muppet movie?
Yes.
Is the Muppet movie ready for us?
Well, I think that it's funny too. I think this is our first episode, not only the first episode where we cover a G-rated movie, but we're covering 2 G-rated movies.
Yeah.
Because Bugsy Malone apparently, I mean, it feels like a bit of a stretch maybe by today's standards, but that got a G rating at the time. The Muppet Movie comes 3 years later and also gets a G rating.
Yeah. Phantom of the Paradise, not G-rated.
Very R. Yeah.
Very R.
Yeah. But so, yeah, we're talking about the OG Muppet movie from 1979. And I mean, listener, you probably are familiar with the fact that there have been many Muppet movies since this one. But I'm actually not going to point any of those out for my not to be confused. A few weeks ago, I went to a doubleheader concert by the band Belle and Sebastian at Pier 17 here in New York. And it's a doubleheader. I mean, they played on 2 consecutive nights. I went to both of them. I'm a fan. And there's a song of theirs called Funny Little Frog that they played one of the 2 nights. And, I couldn't help but think we were on the brink of this episode. And, well, I don't think that Funny Little Frog, the Belle and Sebastian song, has anything to do with the Muppets. I might be wrong, but it's definitely not to be confused with anything Muppet related, including this movie.
Sure. I mean, I think it's a perfectly fair thing to confuse the Muppet movie from 1979, which we're going to talk about today, with the Muppets from 2011.
Sure.
And there are a bunch of it. There's The Great Muppet Caper. There's Muppets Take Manhattan. Muppet Christmas Carol. Maybe not so mistakable with this. Also Muppet Treasure Island. Probably not to be mistaken with this one. Muppets from Space. Definitely not to be mistaken with this one. But the Muppets, I think for sure.
I mean, I would even say Muppet Christmas Carol to an extent because Paul Williams also does the music for that movie.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Even though like all of these are official Muppet movies, but kind of an unofficial Muppet movie is another Jason Segel movie, which would be Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Oh, right.
Has very prominent Muppet scenes. And
the Muppet vampire, yes.
And actually, for some reason, Forgetting Sarah Marshall missed me when it first came out. I only just saw it last year and I'm watching it and I'm like, this movie missed me. Like, if I had seen this when it came out, I would have liked it. Seeing it now, I don't think it's aged particularly well, and I was not on board with it, but I loved the Muppet stuff. I was like, if this was only the Muppet stuff, I would have been all in on this movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's, by the time that we're recording this, we've already recorded our bonus episode where we talk about things that should be offbeat musicals. And I was kicking myself a little bit, but I can say it now that the Dracula musical from Forgetting Sarah Marshall, I would watch the whole thing.
100%.
I was gonna say, but maybe Forgetting Sarah Marshall could be the film that is the offbeat musical, and then that becomes the musical inside the musical.
That could be true.
More prominent in the story.
Maybe so. Yeah.
But we're not talking about Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
That's true.
Anymore.
Not to be confused.
We are talking about the Muppet movie.
Yes.
From 1979.
Yes. And so, we've already said quite a bit about Muppets. Later on, they take Manhattan, they do A Christmas Carol, they team up with Jason Segel. But what is the OG Muppet movie about?
Well, this movie has a very meta opening as we see a gaggle of Muppet characters assembling in a screening room to see a film that is ostensibly their origin story as public figures. And this film starts by then showing us this film, lowering us gently from a great height into a Florida swamp where a banjo-playing frog named Kermit opines about the wonders of Roy G. Biv. He is greeted by a lost man in a rowboat named Bernie, who happens to be a Hollywood agent. Hollywood, the Dream Factory, the Magic Store. He hips Kermit to an audition that is being held there for frogs looking to become rich and famous. Kermit initially turns down the offer, but when Bernie tells him that his talents could, quote, make millions of people happy, Kermit reconsiders, ultimately deciding to set out for California, first by bicycle and then by car when he recruits Fozzie Bear, a struggling vaudevillian performer, also enticed by showbiz success out west. It's a journey that sends them all throughout the country where Kermit and Fozzie meet other struggling anthropomorphic animals and even bring a few of them along to see what future awaits them in Hollywood. They also encounter a number of actual people too, with varying levels of interest in their plight, the least well-intentioned of which being Doc Hopper, a businessman with a franchise of restaurants specializing in serving fried frog legs.
French fried frog legs.
There you go. A lot of alliteration there. Hopper has dollar signs in his eyes when he sees Kermit and becomes dead set on securing him as the face of his growing chain. Will Kermit and the gang outrun and outsmart Hopper, navigate the cross-country trip, and make it to the Dream Factory where they can be masters of their destiny?
And become rich and famous and make millions of people happy.
Yeah. Well, they encounter Orson Welles, who's got a contract just for that.
Well, I think we know the answer to those questions, but we'll leave it hanging as if we don't as we get into this discussion. And, we're eventually, as is our tradition, we're going to get into a proper discussion question about this movie. But I think we all know what the real discussion question to enter talking about this film is. Why are there so many songs about rainbows?
Right.
And what's on the other side?
Yeah.
Well, maybe our friends at Down the Yellow Brick Pod can answer that question for us.
That's a good
Yes.
point. Yeah.
Somewhere
Somewhere over that rainbow,
obviously,
bluebirds fly.
Yes, obviously we have The Wizard of Oz. By extension, we have Wicked. The only other song about a rainbow I could think of in the build-up to this conversation was one from a point of reference that we'll all enjoy, which is the song "A Kiss at the End of the Rainbow" from a Mighty Wind.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah, that's the big Mitch and Mickey song in that movie, and which comes 24 years after the Muppet movie. Maybe an answer to Kermit's question.
Right, that's true. I also think of Rainbow, the band from the 70s.
Oh,
Yeah.
true.
There's that as well.
And then there's the Dio song "Rainbow in the Dark."
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been out there in the world.
But it's funny, I think Rainbow Connection has become one of the best known songs about rainbows.
I would agree as well. And also,
Yeah.
Paul Williams has gone on record saying that this song, Rainbow Connection, is his favorite song he's ever written.
Understandable.
Followed
Yeah.
by Old Souls.
I was going to say, yes. Yeah. We brought that up
Yeah.
earlier, but he has said many times on record that this is the song that's most meaningful to him. I think one of the fun things about Paul Williams and his involvement with the Muppet movie and the Muppet universe more broadly, we talked about his childhood. He was not Mr. Popular as a kid. And he's also said this on record too, that fame was something of an addiction for him.
Yeah.
Not being popular and then suddenly becoming popular was kind of a thing that he struggled with a little bit. But on a very wholesome level, aligning himself with the Henson Productions
Mhm.
was something that he is like eternally grateful for. He didn't grow up with friends who had a treehouse. That was the way he described it. And he's like, these were my friends with the treehouse, and we all just were able to be as creative as we wanted. There were no rules. Nobody ever shot anything down, and he felt so free, from a creative perspective
Yeah.
to do whatever. He even said when he wrote music for this film that Jim Henson was like, I don't need to hear what you're working on.
Yeah.
Just write it and we'll figure everything else out later.
Yeah.
And so that's amazing.
Paul Williams has spoken a lot about his struggles with addiction. He gets sober in 1990, and Muppet Christmas Carol is one of the first large project he does after getting sober.
There we
so
go.
it's like the Muppets is something that carries through for him throughout his life, even after a really difficult transition.
Yeah.
Yeah. And notably, despite Jim Henson's imprint on this Muppet legacy, he really, he's the head Muppet honcho. But the film, it's, sometimes it's this kind of thing is surprising. It's not directed by him. It's directed by James Frawley. A little bit like, as we've mentioned a few times recently, The Nightmare Before Christmas not being directed by Tim Burton, but by Henry Selick.
Right.
But it is worth pointing out that most, if not all, other Muppet movies are directed by Muppet people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that actually, as great as I think this movie is, I actually don't think that this was like a super positive environment from things that I've read. And I do think that Jim Henson and the other people more directly involved with the Muppets decided well, going forward, we need one of us.
Yeah.
It's hard to bring in an outsider to such an established community like that.
Yeah. But, talking about being an outsider to this, believe it or not, watching the film for this episode, it's my first time seeing it.
Same.
Yeah.
I had not seen it as a kid. I don't think my parents would have been opposed to showing it to me. It's just not I think, I have reason to think that they would have liked it too, but it's just not what happened to be on the docket at that time.
That's exactly how I feel. And I was talking to Dougie about this because he had seen this, and his mom is is big into the Muppets and had shown him a lot of Muppet stuff as a kid. And I was like, I don't think my parents have anything against the Muppets. They can answer after they listen to this. They can tell me directly. But I didn't grow up in a Muppet household.
Neither did I.
I was not shown the Muppet stuff. And Dougie's mom is a little younger than I think any of our parents are. So at times I wonder if it's slightly a generational thing. Like she was a kid when a small child when the Muppets were coming out, when the Muppet Show was on TV and when these movies were coming out. Whereas my parents were like in their 20s,
Right.
like in their teens and then 20s. Like my parents would have been 20 years old by the time this movie came out. So it's like that I think a 20-year-old can very much enjoy this movie, but I don't know that they were rushing to the theater to see this. So
Well,
they didn't have
also-
as strong of an emotional connection to pass along to me.
And also being a 20-year-old, you actively, I think, miss stuff like this.
yeah.
Or you go, no, that's not for adults.
Yeah,
like
particularly in
I'm
1979.
I'm here to take in the adult stuff now.
Yeah.
And so yeah, absolutely. No, I'm like you guys. I did not grow up in a household that was big on the Muppets. I mean, we were more of a Sesame Street home.
Which Dougie and I'm confused by what is a Muppet. I'm like, Big Bird is in the Muppet movie.
It's yes, it is the overlap, I think, is there, and but the end of the film, which we have to talk about, I think blurs the lines between what is what.
What is a Muppet?
But especially now, because now they're actually all in the same umbrella.
Yeah.
I was when it came to kind of puppets and things of that nature. It was more Sesame Street for me.
Yeah.
I did see this movie though, and I don't remember where, but I definitely had seen it. But I saw it again as an adult in a really fun way, which is a year ago. I was with my son and we were visiting my folks in the Asheville, North Carolina area. And there was a movie theater close by that was showing this film.
Cool.
And
do you remember what the theater was?
And I am, what's that?
Would you remember what the theater was?
I can't remember right now off the top of my head. But no, it's fine. But yeah, so they were showing it. And I'm always on the hunt to see movies in the theater with my son, always.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so this showed up and I was like, we should all go. And my folks were like, okay. And it was a blast. I mean, we were like skipping out of the theater. All of us were. It was just a complete delight. I mean, 10 out of 10 evening. So it was really fun, and it was fun to engage with it, I think, a little bit more directly. I think also seeing this as an adult, I think I really see what is really fun and sweet about the Muppets. It's very different than I think what their contemporaries of Sesame Street are about. It's like chess and checkers, man. It's like they're at very different games, I think.
Yeah.
But
totally.
Yes.
This episode comes out next week on the 10th. So if you're listening to this the week it comes out and you want to see this movie in a theater, it's playing at the Film Forum in New York on June 14th.
Yes, it is.
So
awesome.
you too can go see this in a theater.
Yeah,
if you live in the New York area and don't have plans on Sunday.
Yeah, please do it.
As part of their Film Forum Junior programming, which is, for kids. But it's, despite the fact that I had never seen the Muppet Movie before, I had a sense of some aspects of it before seeing it for a very particular reason. So, the Rainbow Connection, and this is a song that circulates widely. I knew it before watching this film for this episode. So I actually think the first place I ever heard the Rainbow Connection was there's a memorable scene on The Office when Andy Bernard plays it, because he plays banjo. Ed Helms, I think, plays banjo in real life. And then in college, I've mentioned it a few times before on this podcast that I was part of this club, a performance group called Midnight Cabaret. Shout out to MidCab. One of our past guests, Lily Desmond, was also part of this group. And that, it was mostly sketch comedy, but there was room for other kinds of personalized performances too. And when I was in senior year at Sarah Lawrence, also an alma mater of Brian De Palma and Jessica Harper, that I was aware of a type of instrument called an automaton, which I have with me on this table right now.
It's adorable. It has a face.
It's shaped like a note head. I believe they're manufactured in Japan. And, they had become a bit of an online sensation. People had recorded videos of themselves playing famous songs on automatons. And I thought, how easy are these to get? So then I went on the internet and found I could order one for about $20. And I thought, okay, I think I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to be like the friend who has an automaton.
Cool.
And so I ordered one and started in Midnight Cabaret playing, not always weekly, but frequently performing songs on the automaton. Others included the Me Channel theme and the Mission Impossible theme. Monty Python's Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. But I think the highlight of the year that I did this, by virtue of the fact that it got revived for our Best of show at the end of the year, was when I performed the Rainbow Connection on the automaton. I'm not one to make an empty promise here. Here's what it sounds like. That's what an automaton sounds like, in case you're wondering. And just saying, Madeline, you may want to take a phone out right now for a little video for the socials.
Yeah, since I don't get to play an instrument for this particular segment, so I'll be the videographer.
All right. Well, I don't know how much of this song we want to do right here, but
I'm just gonna follow you, dude.
Okay, maybe let's go with say the first verse. How does that sound?
That sounds great. So I'll try to stay I don't play violin, for the record, but if you're wondering how to do vibrato on automaton, I think it's kind of a similar technique.
Can you do it? Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, just a little
side to side.
It's all in the wrist.
It's all in the wrist, yes. But thank you for your applause, Madeline.
That was excellent.
One time when I performed it, a good friend of mine who I've mentioned maybe once or twice on the podcast before, named Levi, was in the audience. And when I hit the key change at the very end, he let out a gigantic guffaw. It warmed my heart.
Yes. Yeah.
And
I love that. That's great.
You know what else warmed my heart? Was this movie.
This movie.
Come on.
Yeah.
What a great movie.
Yeah. And I'm not the kind of person, I don't know if my taste suggests this, but I'm not the kind of person to watch a really well-made kids movie and just be kind of like the kind of snobby one who's like, I'm not into kids fare. No, there's plenty of kid-friendly stuff that I enjoy, and this is one of them. It's so impressive on a technical level what they did in the Muppet movie, but the story is just, it's very meaningful too. It's super touching at many points. It's also got a lot of humor that as an adult still hits you very hard.
Yeah. It's very clever. It's snappy.
Oh, big time.
It's absolutely. And it's the way that people talk about watching SpongeBob as an adult and you get all kinds of references you wouldn't have understood as a kid. I see a bunch of that in the Muppet movie too. The fact that the arch villain of this film is a huckster kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something you could have a movie made for adults where that same kind of villain is present. But, Charles Durning plays him so compellingly. And, it's kind of like almost 20 years or 21 years ahead of him playing Pappy O'Daniel in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, channeling a similar spirit.
For sure.
Yeah.
He's so good at that kind of guy.
Yeah. I think Griffin from Blank Check says he's maybe one of his very favorite character actors in history. It's easy to see why when you know that, he's in Dog Day Afternoon 4 years before this, because of course I'm mentioning that.
Yeah.
Any chance to.
Yeah. Really the whole cast, and this is a film laden with cameos as well, but the fact that there are all these people who have reached various heights in the film industry who want to do this very campy, kid-friendly entertainment. There's just something really heartwarming about that.
I think that throughout the 70s, like the Muppets have such a rise, and the fact that the Muppet Show also, has a lot of guest stars. Like that's how Paul Williams originally even gets into this orbit. I think that the Muppets have a lot of cachet at this point. I think people really want to be involved in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big time.
Maybe, third Nashville reference this episode that Elliot Gould can appear in a movie like this. This is maybe the most kid-friendly thing I've ever seen Elliot Gould in.
I don't think this is his only Muppet appearance.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think he comes back. Yeah.
But it's also like something that is true of kids' entertainment beyond just this movie, is that you have things that as an adult, are like real forms of danger that are played like very, played for laughs in a film like this, but like maybe a little bit like Bugsy Malone, because that this is artificial and the stakes are a little lower, you can get away with things like that.
And because of the meta, like the meta way that this movie is presented, like you see them all at the beginning watching the film.
Yes.
So that like not only are you watching a movie, but also like, oh, this is the origin story of their success.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that they're all okay.
Exactly.
Yes.
At the end of the story.
And Kermit has all of his legs.
Yeah. Well, it also, like earlier on in the film when they're at El Sleazo, Fozzie Bear gets shot at.
He does. This is true. It's
And-
not just vegetables or, things of that nature.
We also witness what may be the most benign result of a car crash ever depicted about midway through the film. Yeah, we've already said a bunch of things where it's like, you know what the stakes could be, but the fact that, and this is a movie where there are kind of like moments you could call a deus ex machina, but I'm absolutely not going to criticize the film for having it, because it's artificial. It's allowed to do that. It's allowed to break the reality. It is allowed to make its own rules when it wants to.
Yeah, so we're closing out our offbeat musical cycle, returning once more to puppetry. But of all the puppet movies that we've discussed before, that would be Little Shop of Horrors and Annette, I think the musical numbers in this movie, at least in my opinion, they feel like they're the most in dialogue with a kind of traditional Broadway style of tradition. And I was wondering how you guys squared that more conventional approach to these songs with the very unconventional puppet heavy presentation.
Well, something that Julian was mentioning about Phantom of the Paradise is that the musical numbers were moving the plot along and conveying character traits in a way that's kind of traditional for a non-traditional movie. And I think that applies to this movie as well. And I also think that these songs pull from a lot of different genres, not just. I see what you mean, how they're accessible in a way that Broadway is accessible, and I think they move the plot forward in a way that a lot of Broadway musicals do. But I do think that a lot of the songs in this pull from different genres for inspiration. Like Dr. Teeth is obviously inspired by Dr. John, and that main Electric Mayhem song has some Cajun jazz funk influences in it. And then in contrast with that, you have Miss Piggy's song that's which is never before, never again. And it has these emotional orchestral swells that I think call back to some of Paul Williams' early work with again, Evergreen, and then Let Me Be the One, which is one he wrote for Anne Murray. That sounds a lot like Never Before, Never Again. And so I think that's a real strength of the film and of the songs in the film, is that they all feel like they're written by the same guy or the same team, but they do feel a little distinct from each other in what they're choosing to pull for inspiration.
Totally. Yeah, I think you made the Phantom of the Paradise callback, which I think is very apt, that this is another film where he can hop from one style to another, what feels like seamlessly. We have to note, too, that Paul Williams appears briefly at El Sleazo as a piano player, fittingly. And from what I understand, I think that appearance that he has as a top hat, that was a broader appearance that he took on in real life, too. There was something that came up again in that Billy Corgan interview about him wearing a top hat in his own performances. I have to call out, if we're going to talk about like traditional musicals and how adjacent or not this is to that, I have to call out what, aside from the Rainbow Connection, is my favorite song in the movie, which is "I'm Going to Go Back There Someday," as sung by Gonzo.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of like the sentiment it conveys, also the fact that it shares being in the key of G, it made me think a lot of "Somewhere That's Green" from Little Shop.
Yep. I Want song.
It's an I Want song, but also it's just, you get a little development of Gonzo, the plumber extraordinaire, because great plumbers are born, not made.
Right.
You get a little bit of development already, but this is his real moment. And it's just, there's something, it almost, I want to say it doesn't matter who this is coming from. It's a very touching song, but I think the fact that it's coming from a puppet, like who you're not really sure what kind of creature he is, but you know that there's just something very empathetic that he's going through. There's just something, I found it deeply moving, that song.
Oh yeah, for
100%.
sure. I've been trying to figure out why puppets make so much sense for an offbeat musical, and we talked a little bit about this earlier.
Yeah.
But I think that people on the whole, I think, love to be deceived in a safe way.
Mhm.
And I think that master puppeteers do that. Like they breathe life into felt and fabric and ping pong balls. And one thing that I love is when you see Jim Henson do like press tours or interviews and stuff, he gets such a kick out of the people interviewing him, how they can't help but look at the puppet, even though they know that it's Jim Henson, puppeteering it. I think that that's something that speaks a lot to the origins of how puppet are vaudeville. And there's like the whole meta element of vaudeville in this movie, I feel, where it's like these characters like were vaudevillian and then got like neuralized or something, or like got like dispersed across the country,
and then they like find each other,
and then they find each other, which I think is also like one of the beautiful messages of this movie, is that everybody is eccentric in their own way, but like all you need to do is like be open-minded, and you will find other people that are weird like you.
Yeah.
I think that puppets, there's already a suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why not just go for it? It's like, you're not going to lose an audience by then having a puppet sing.
Yeah.
Because the conceit of a puppet is already a bit of a stretch. So, and if you already have the viewer, then you're not going to lose them by then having them breaking a song.
And something that Dougie was pointing out that I think was a very good point is that Kermit as a puppet is so expressive. Like Kermit is a fairly simplistic design.
Definitely.
But because of his design, like his face can show a lot of emotion in a way that a more structured puppet like Miss Piggy, there's the Miss Piggy like kung fu scene where her eyes are like crazy, which is so funny and so fun. But that's obviously like something that they've had to change on the puppet.
Right.
Whereas Kermit can have this kind of expression from the way his face like scrunches or like the way his body moves. And I think that him being the lead in the Muppets in general, largely, and then also in this movie, I think points to everything that you're saying. I think a super expressive puppet Muppet like Kermit helps with this.
Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely. And I think that on the topic of puppets that play music, this is maybe the one movie where we have to make some exceptions for our typical rules of instrument playing accuracy.
It's
that's
very
a good point.
difficult. Almost
playing like an F chord the whole time.
Yeah,
and almost everyone in this is left-handed.
Yeah, Kermit's a lefty banjo player. I mean, I thought it was like a C chord that his right hand is locked into the whole time, but
I don't know banjo.
That's true.
Yeah.
Good point. Different tuning.
Yeah, this is absolutely true. But I've experimented a little bit with banjo over time, but that's a different conversation. But then interestingly, that when Rolf the dog gets his moment at the piano, that I don't know that it's perfectly accurate, but you can see those are real human hands playing the keys there.
Yeah.
Totally.
So that impressed me that was done. And maybe now we're at the point of talking about little details, but this is the kind of movie, it's so like chock full of little vignettes, little details that I feel like, discussing a lot of the greater whole consists of that kind of attention to detail. I mean, this is a great movie for pun lovers.
My God. So good.
I was locked in from very early on because of that. I mean, drinks on the house, a
Mhm.
fork in the road.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, it's not exactly a pun, but clever that I've lost my sense of direction. Have you tried Hare Krishna?
Yep.
I mean, all
And
the
you get that
different-
several times.
Yeah.
all
That
the
keeps
different
coming
Hare
back.
Krishna jokes that come up in the movie.
It's so 70s too.
yeah,
right?
but
Yeah.
speaking of things that a kid might not get but could later come back to.
Of
But I
course.
wonder if in the 70s a kid would have gotten this. They were a lot, I think, more public at that time.
Okay.
That's true.
I should ask my parents then, who were more like nearing 20 when this movie came out, but still. Yeah, but as far as other, like to talk about little details and brief performances, great cameos. I mean, I think my favorite, apart from as a cinephile, I mean, gotta love Orson Welles being the Hollywood producer at the end.
Love it.
Yeah,
That's
I
my
mean,
Lord.
Orson Welles fills a very similar role in this movie too. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but I know all three of us have seen it, so you will know what I'm talking about. But the end of The Fabelmans
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
obviously
Yes.
has a very
There's some weight
prominent
that,
director cameo at the end of The Fabelmans that I don't want to spoil for anyone that hasn't seen it. But I think this fills a very similar role.
Absolutely. And also just kind of like putting some respect on the Orson Welles name, because he's revered now, but at the time that, like, it took around 30 years for Citizen Kane to become the enshrined classic that it is. Pauline Kael lent a huge helping hand in that. And so, I mean, for this, is clearly a movie made by movie lovers, putting respect on the name of someone who deserves it. Gotta love that move. Also, that his secretary is Cloris Leachman.
Yes. Good point there. Yep.
But I think, apart from him, my favorite cameo in the movie is that of Mel Brooks
yes.
as Professor Classman.
Yes.
Um,
True.
And that whole sequence where he attempts to put the, as he calls it, the electric beanie on Kermit's head, to try and make him succumb to a scientific formula that will make him accessible for his frog legs.
Yeah.
The stakes are suddenly high. And it's a great example of cartoon stakes where something bad's about to happen, but you kind of know everything's going to be okay. And so they can just get away with playing it up and having fun with it. And some of the lines of Mel Brooks that Professor Classman says that I had to enjoy are, "Soon there will be enough electricity coursing through your frog brain to light up Cincinnati." And a pig that goes bananas? What is this? A luau?
Yes.
Yeah.
All
Also,
good stuff.
we have to note that at the time of this recording and the release of this episode, Mel Brooks is about to turn 100 years old.
Yes.
Wow.
Still around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Still crushing it.
My
Yeah.
favorite of the cameos is Carol Kane. And to the point that I'm upset that they only put her in twice. Like, it feels like it's going to be a runner through the whole movie.
Right.
And
Mhm.
I wouldn't have wanted them to overuse it, but I'm upset that you only really get one callback to it.
Good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
my favorite was Orson Welles as well. But I really like
As Wells.
I also really like Richard Pryor in this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's great.
He's so funny. He's just like with the balloons, just like that really nice touch. I also feel like he has a nice back and forth with Gonzo. You mentioned before that
Yeah.
that's he has his song. I feel like Gonzo's kind of a fifth wheel here, so to speak, throughout most of the movie. So I like that he gets that moment. I also love that the Big Bird reference we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But I just love he's like, trying to break into public television, and Fozzie Bear's like, good luck.
Yeah.
Great. Just really good stuff.
Oh, yeah. And that's part that leads to the confusion between Sesame Street and the Muppets,
Absolutely.
understandably. But then also, like, one Muppet we haven't mentioned yet is Animal. And well, I this is kind of like a, rewatching not the whole movie, but this scene thing that I noticed. But so, I mean, Animal comes pretty early on. He's part of the Electric Mayhem. But then during that little portion, like 2/3 of the way through, where the movie the Muppets are watching temporarily stops and we get a little glimpse of them in the audience. And I think it's Kermit that says to Animal, who's complaining, "Don't worry, Animal, your big scene is coming up." And
Mhm.
little do we know at that point, he means literally a big
A
scene.
big
Big scene. Like,
Exactly.
as soon as they go into like the saloon with the
the Beekman.
yeah, Beaker and I forget
Beaker, thank you.
Beaker and the other one.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not a Muppetologist.
Neither am I.
As soon as they say like, "Oh, here's our like giant grow potion,"
Instagrow, yeah.
I start chanting giant animal. Like, immediately I was like, I know where this is going, and I'm so excited to see Animal get giant.
No,
Yeah.
that doctor. you're
Doc
thinking
Hopper
of
was
is-
not excited, by the way.
Yeah.
But yes.
That that Muppet you're thinking of is Dr. Bunsen Honeydew.
Yeah.
Yes, of
Yes.
course.
There we go. Thank you. Bunsen. Love that. Also, like, oddly, that we're having a conversation about Paul Williams, somebody who was given medicine to apparently grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. It worked for Animal.
Not unfortunately for the esteemed songwriter of this film, but that's okay. We love him just the same.
Yeah.
Two very quick ones. Never Before, Never Again. Is one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my entire life. I played it for my wife Elizabeth this morning, and she was thanking me for playing it. She's like, "This is just what I needed." That like 20-second held out note that just keeps climbing up is like, will just be the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
Just incredible stuff. And then we have to talk about the very end of this movie.
Yeah. The
Mhm.
end is so cool.
The end is so amazing.
Jack.
Yeah.
Jack comes back.
He does come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Blast through. But like that scene of all of them together,
Yeah.
like what is going on? Like
Yeah.
just unreal. Again, no CGI. This is all practical stuff. It's a marvel.
It's every Muppet that had been introduced by 1979.
Yeah.
Every single Muppet
Yeah.
in existence
Yeah.
is in that shot.
The number of puppeteers that were just like crammed into the floor on this, it blows my mind. It just, another log on the fire for just practical, keep it in camera. Like this stuff is unbelievable when it works. It is totally breathtaking to see the very end of that film.
Yeah, it's 250 Muppets and 137 puppeteers, which is also crazy because that means that some puppeteers are doing multiple Muppets.
I know.
And
Come
that's
on.
also interesting because some
on.
Muppets take multiple puppeteers.
Yeah. So there we go. I don't know how
I
it
don't know
averages
how
out.
this math works out.
It's not the John Waters multiple maniacs, but
Yeah.
multiple Muppet acts.
Right, there we go.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Cool. Maybe worth saying too, I just recently I've been there many times, but just went again to the Museum of the Moving Image and took a more thorough look at the Jim Henson exhibition.
Yeah.
Knowing that we were about to discuss this, and they have the Kermit used in the Rainbow Connection, as well as Jim Henson's headpiece from that very performance there on display. So go check it out, New Yorkers.
Yeah.
In Astoria.
I went to that in November. It's a delight.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, can we jump into Unlikely Shared Universe?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Does anybody else have one for Phantom of the Paradise?
No.
All right.
No.
May I start this off?
Sure.
All right. So in Phantom of the Paradise, we know Phoenix is a talented singer who readily commands the stage and sadly is subjected to the exploits of the devious Swan, and undeservingly deprived of perhaps more fruitful prospects in collaboration with Winslow Leach. What she doesn't reveal to them, though, is that her attempt at musical stardom is actually the second act of her life in the performing arts. Prior to adopting the stage name Phoenix, she went about life with her birth name, Susie Banyan, and found her passion for performance in dance. Appearing to have some bright prospects as a ballerina, Banyan enrolled at a dance academy in Freiburg, Germany, that, from the very beginning, was hiding something sinister. As mysterious fates befell her classmates and the staff of this school remained unsettlingly coy, Banyan decided to take matters into her own hands and investigate rumors of supernatural occurrences at this school. Coming upon an answer and nearly being killed in the process, Banyan luckily makes the right move at the right moment to save herself and end the paranormal reign of terror upon this school. But she is understandably severely traumatized by the experience and unable to see herself continuing in the world of dance. Holding out some hope to continue in the performing arts, she decides to move back to the United States and build up her talents as a singer, bringing some of her physical expertise to later performances under the stage name Phoenix. But then, when she is exploited by the producer Swan and nearly loses her life once again in his botched attempt at a publicity stunt, Susie, or Phoenix, decides she has had it with the performing arts.
Done.
I don't blame her.
Yeah.
It's not loved her back.
Very understandable. After this tumultuous chain of events, Phoenix decides on yet another name change, this time using her middle name Joyce, and manages for some time to create a quiet, normal life for herself in the Western United States. She gets married and raises a son, and for a good amount of time, things are looking pretty okay for her. But when her son becomes mysteriously sick upon arriving at a new school, Joyce begins to feel a profound guilt, which, combined with her lingering trauma of performing arts mishaps, manifests into her own feelings of illness that elude easy classification. Looking for a situation where she can withdraw from these strange adversities, Joyce learns about a desert community named Wrenwood, offering a refuge for people with so-called environmental illnesses and she decides to enroll in yet another new surrounding and see if Wrenwood can offer her some of the peace she seeks. Though deep in her heart, she may sense the questionable underpinnings of founder Peter Dunning's outlook and methods, Joyce generally thrives in the haven of Wrenwood, where following a series of strange misfortunes, she can finally feel a way that at least resembles being safe.
Yes.
Yes, this is Jessica Harper. You know, we've sung her praises, sung being the operative word.
Yeah.
Throughout this episode, she appears as well in Suspiria.
Yes,
which comes out after Phantom of the Paradise, but I think lines up pretty nicely in this way.
I think it's more prequel for her. Yeah, absolutely.
And worth saying too that longtime listeners, you may know that our episode when we covered Safe is the episode before the introduction of Unlikely Shared Universe. We had talked about it for that episode, but we didn't record it then. But I was thinking of at least the Suspiria connection all the way back then, and now here it is.
Finally got a chance
full circle,
to do
baby.
it.
Yes.
Awesome. I'll jump in if you guys don't mind here.
Go for it.
We're going Muppet Movie on this one.
All right.
So when Kermit walks into the El Sleazo establishment, he is greeted by a woman in red who asks him to buy her a drink. It turns out that this lady is more than just a patron of the establishment. She's the daughter and heiress of the entire El Sleazo Club empire. Yes, there isn't just one El Sleazo bar on the way to California from Florida, but several. And it's a long-standing chain that dates back all the way to the days of the Wild West. Back in the 1870s, in a town called Rock Ridge, this woman in red's great-great-grandmother was a vaudeville performer by the name of Lily von Stoop, who was enormously successful as a body cabaret performer. She did, however, grow tired of playing the games as an objectified woman for weary cowboys to ogle at. Though tempted by a resourceful and charismatic sheriff, Lily soon decides it's time to diversify her life a little bit. She starts a family with another man with a smart business mind and hangs up the garter belts for P&L sheets, and she and her husband start their own bar called El Sleazo. It's a great big hit of an establishment, and they end up franchising it and passing this business down to their kids, who pass it down to their kids and then to their kids. And though there were at least 4 or so generations of American-born and raised children in this bloodline, they haven't quite kicked that German accent. But they have the successful chain of bars, so all is well on that front, which is where we come to the present. And now we have some context for this lady in red who has some fun at Kermit's expense.
Well,
Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
I like that you did a Mel Brooks.
Yes.
That's also fun.
Keeping it a little in universe.
And this is Madeline Kahn.
This is Madeline Kahn.
Different
absolutely.
Madeline than the one whose voice you've been hearing these last few
Yeah,
hours.
well, I think she's a Madeline and I'm
Yes.
a Madeline. So
Yes.
there's that very, subtle difference.
There we go.
The lins and the lines.
Very true. It was kind of there, and I feel like she was even doing some of the Lily von Stoop.
Yeah.
So
I can see that
Yeah.
for sure.
there we go.
Yeah, she's also a very fun cameo in this.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally.
Well, sticking with the Muppet Movie, Max is Doc Hopper's right-hand man, and although he's pursuing Kermit throughout much of the movie, we see he still has a good heart. Perhaps he has the resources to support himself without the help of Doc Hopper. To paraphrase Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, he's nice because he's rich. You see, Max isn't just an underling, he's actually an investor in Doc Hopper's French fried frog legs. This is actually confirmed by Doc Hopper in the movie when he offers to double Max's percentage if he continues to pursue Kermit. Originally coming from family money, Max made a name for himself as an investor and a philanthropist originally on the West Coast. Due to his love of music, he established a research grant in the world of musicology, which musicologists from around the world applied to. Overwhelmed with many qualified applicants, Max, or as he was known at that time, Frederick Larrabee, invited his finalists to a banquet to get to know them and see whose research sounded most compelling. Here he meets one of his finalists, who's not only a musicologist, but also a geologist, proposing further research on his igneous tambula rocks that hold certain musical properties. Frederick, or Max, is invested in this theory, but is interested in this theory, but is even more taken by this researcher's charm charming fiance. Unfortunately, this candidate and his supposed fiance have gotten mixed up in both a jewel heist and a government conspiracy, leading Frederick or Max and others to be taken hostage. Without going into further details, he gets out of this jam, but this stressful situation has motivated him to invest in smaller enterprises going forward. He then moves to Florida and meets Doc Hopper, who's eager to woo investors for his new restaurant. And now all they need is a spokesfrog.
What's up, Doc?
Yep.
Great. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. So as soon as I saw Max, I was like,
This
he's
is
my
happening.
guy.
Yeah, I wasn't quite putting the pieces together at first, but then as soon as you said like geologist,
The geologist got me.
musicology,
Yeah.
I was like, there it is.
Yeah.
And I just recently saw that for the first time. I get why you love it.
Yeah.
It's a great one.
Yeah.
This is Austin Pendleton.
Yes, that is very true.
Who plays the part. At first in the Muppet Movie, for a minute there, I thought he was William Finley, who plays Leech in Phantom of the Paradise.
I could see that. for
There
sure.
are some similarities. I
Yeah.
agree. 100%.
Yes, physically speaking.
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we did it.
We
talked
did it.
Paul Williams.
Yeah.
Any last quick things we want to say about him?
Just he's incredible. I had so much fun diving more into. I mean, I had seen just Phantom of the Paradise. I loved getting into these other movies, and I love just also listening to Paul Williams interviews. Like he's such a fascinating person, and I think he's added so much good to the world in a similar way to Kermit. He's brought smiles and happiness to millions of people.
Yeah, and what I'm realizing now may have been a sort of tenuous reference to Bugsy Malone. The first film that I ever saw Paul Williams appear in was in a cameo in Edgar Wright's film Baby Driver.
Yeah, they're friends.
Yes, where he plays a gangster. And I mean, I think I was curious about him from then on, knowing that he is a great songwriter. I'm really grateful to have Beyond the Rainbow connection, maybe gone to the other side of this rainbow and experienced some other of his great works. And I mean, we acknowledged we didn't include Ishtar in this episode. I'm curious to see where his work shows up in other places, what the songs sound like. I'll also gladly replay all these songs over and over again. Yeah, you go, Paul Williams.
I agree. Getting to check out his interviews was especially cool. There's one I have to shout out, which is, I think this was 1972 or 1973 or so. He shows up on The Tonight Show in full Planet of the Apes regalia.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's absolutely insane. Smoking a cigarette. He is like dropping one-liners, and it is unreal. It is so worth it. If anybody listening has not seen this, you just like pause this episode and just find it on YouTube. It's a total hoot. Yeah, as you said, he's hilarious. He's very insightful. He's very like self-deprecating. I think these are all things you can hear in his music. And he has this like very strong understanding of existing traditions. I think also how he is on that Tonight Show interview, there's a fearlessness to him that I think is like very cool. He's got something there that I think is emulatable.
Totally.
And clearly like a great collaborator, a great connector, always willing to work with anybody and everybody. So like, yeah, totally won over on Paul Williams.
Absolutely.
What a dude. Yeah.
Well, this concludes our cycle of offbeat musicals. This has been a fascinating journey.
Yeah.
I think I can speak for all of us when I say that, and you'll get to see a little recap about it in our next newsletter on Substack. So follow us, subscribe to our newsletter, sleeplesscinematicpod.substack.com. And well, we're on the cusp of a new cycle. Around a year ago, we both covered a film, and then there was a major blockbuster that included double roles. And so I got started thinking about films that feature actors playing dual roles. And now we're going to finally do a cycle in comprising films that feature twins and doppelgangers. And the very first of those films is one where the double role is played by Nicolas Cage. Yep, you probably guessed it. We're going to talk about Adaptation, written by Charlie Kaufman, directed by Spike Jonze, released in 2002. We're going from one movie with a swamp setting to another.
Yeah.
Very good point there.
Yes.
Meaningful film for me as a young burgeoning cinephile. I saw this one. It was a new release. I can't wait to talk about it. Yeah, this is a very fun film.
Totally. This is our view unanimous, so we've all seen it before. I'm super excited to revisit it.
Absolutely, as am I. And in addition to this podcast, you can follow us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can contact us via email. We would love to hear from you at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Subscribe to our newsletter on Substack, sleeplesscinematicpod.substack.com. If you're on Letterboxd, you can follow me, Julian, at Julian_Barthold.
And you can follow me, Madeline, at Patroness of Cats. If you are listening to us for the first time, thank you for finding us. If this is the second or third or 9th or 90th time you've listened to us, thank you for sticking with us. We have really grown to love doing this, and it means the world to have our budding listenership grow.
And if you have not already, we'd ask you, return listener, to pretty please, write a positive review and rate us on your podcast platform of choice, because this is one of the best ways for new listeners to find us and help our podcast take its next steps. You can also keep it grassroots. You can tell a friend to tell a friend about the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast. That helps too.
Life's like a movie. Write your own ending. Keep believing. Keep pretending. We've done just what we've set out to do. Thanks to the lovers, the dreamers, and you. Go home. Go home. Bye-bye.